Hello, everybody. Hi. Uh, Debunked in Leaf. I don't know if you guys read this or not and want to join the discussion, or if you're familiar with it and would like to join the discussion. I know Hyoshi did, so I'm like in a call with him ahead of time, but we can like stitch together a group call if anybody wants to join the discussion verbally. Because for anything like a literary discussion, I know discussing this in what is it, like 240 characters for YouTube chat at a time is going to be abysmal. Hello, Captain Iron Mask. So yeah, I have Hyoshi with me because I know he did his homework. Introduce yourself to my dear viewers, Hyoshi. Collaborator. Oh, he's muted. Uh-oh. Also, hi, Dark Virus. Did you want to join the call, Dark Virus? I know you had the audiobook go. Let me fix whatever's going on here. I will do my best. Try that.
Hi.
Oh yeah, he's not muted anymore. That was loud as hell.
Oh, nice.
All right.
Increasing loudness.
Oh, you can't? Unfortunate, Dark Virus. By the way, what happened to your stream? I saw it in self promo. And I saw it like live on YouTube, but I see it's like not in self promo anymore. Do you like rip the VOD or something?
I think I've done that once. I've done that exactly also self.
I mean, I've murdered VODs before. It happens.
Yeah. Do I have to introduce myself again?
Yeah, introduce yourself again as my collaborator, not friend.
Oh, okay, we're not friends. Hi, I'm Kyoshi. I'm only slightly shorter than Sato. Just like a little bit.
Yoshi is 5'2".
Hell no.
You got you got a YouTube strike because of music. That's very real. Okay. Which reminds me, let me see if my music's working.
Ooh. What's on the playlist?
Let me go back to the beginning. Oh, it looks like it's working. Oh, we're vibing. Nice. We got the Charleston playing.
Ooh.
Very period correct.
Yeah.
Allegedly from copyright-free sources, so allegedly we won't get any strikes or issues with this.
I don't have that issue because I make all my own music.
Here she makes music, guys. All right, so yeah, I will re-ask the question in case, because I asked it when I first went live, but did anybody else read or would like to join the discussion verbally in any way, shape, or form? I am open and willing to add anybody to the Discord call and figure that out. I've also realized probably the next one I do, I will officially have like my Discord server set up and just allow people to, from the Discord, like join in while it's happening.
That's a really good idea, actually.
Or maybe add a role to people who've read it or are interested. Because having like an open Discord where anybody can immediately join while you're streaming sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Oh, Captain, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people. It's sort of the reason I chose this as well, is like for people who just want to join the discussion or like listen. It's a book most people have a history with, whether being forced to read it or otherwise. So, Hyoshi.
Tasada.
Yes. I will ask you, overall, what are your thoughts about The Great Gatsby? Good, bad, meh?
I like it. I like it as a period piece. All right.
As a period piece.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is kind of right. Of course, it's a timeless story. I can get to that later, but I think it kind of encapsulates like the general feeling of like listlessness post World War One. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that's the only like is that like the only thing the book's about to you is just like that listlessness after World War One?
Certainly not. Certainly, but I mean, like overall, I think on this read, what I got, um, or that's like the dude. I read this whole thing in four and a
Yeah,
half
you're
hours,
good. You're good. No
fast as
worries.
I
But
could, you know. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the general vibe that I got this time.
okay. Honestly that's pretty really fair. I've seen a lot of
Yeah,
online discussions about The Great Gatsby, and a lot of focus is like on the post World War One slash Roaring Twenties life, and
right.
kind of this. There was almost this captured feeling of the failure of the American dream.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the big. How do I say this? When this book gets talked about, that's something immediately present, right? It's a good way to describe.
Yeah, which I think is funny because the conversation is still pertinent. Where
Absolutely. Yeah.
a lot of people, especially now, look at the boomers and they're like, "Oh, they had it easy. Like the American dream was still alive then." But you have this
Right.
book from 40 years before they were born that is like, "The American dream is dead. The previous generation had it easy."
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I like I like how often this book goes out of its way to show you how terrible rich people are.
Also, hi
You know?
Slider, and thank you. Yeah, I know the Slider, and I know this is going to be very different from my normal mahjong streams, so I appreciate even just lurking.
Everybody speaking of liking the
Yeah, everybody like and subscribe. Anyway, but yeah, so I think I think that's a big theme of The Great Gatsby is like it's not intentionally written as if hello Captain Rams said can't stay, but this is going to be in an hour. I may be back. Hope Yoshi you have a great day. I have no idea how long this is going to take, honestly. Like I took care of stuff because I'm just like I don't know. It could be 45 minutes and we're done. You know, I just go over notes and all right, we're done. Um, I think overall one of the things I enjoy most about The Great Gatsby is the fact that it is really strongly a showcase of failure.
yeah, in a lot of different ways, right? Like it's not just one character that has that arc.
Like literally every single character here fails to achieve their goals.
Right. Right, right.
It's
And usually
it's
it's their fault. Or sorry for swearing, but it's their fault.
you can swear it's okay. Just no slurs, please. Um,
uh no.
but yeah, it is. Yeah, like almost always, it's their fault, and it is something I'll
Yeah.
get into a little bit later as to why it's their fault. Also, why did
Right.
my music stop? I just realized. Is it only playing one at a time? I told it to play the whole page. That's so annoying. All right. That's all right.
Dude, I have a 2 hour long Chet Baker chat going on in the background inside the stream mute. Feels very
It doesn't have like a proper repeat on this site. Oh well.
Are you on a royalty free music site?
Yeah, just like one of those are random. I was like 1920s like era music copyright free, and I was like, all right, hit play. Anyway, who is this Great Gatsby? Well, Stargazer. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but Jay Gatsby is actually a man that goes by the name James Gatz. That's his real name, as is revealed later in the story.
Gats with a Z, right?
Yes, Gatz with a Z. Which, man, it's so weird to like talk about this story. I feel like I'm jumping out of order, but while it's prevalent, I will say, the implied reason, or what I believe the reason that he goes by a different name is yes, he's leaving his old life behind, blah blah blah. When he does it, but the reason he chooses Gatsby over Gats is it shows like an old English name, and he's like, "Oh yes, I went to Oxford, old sport."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so he puts on this fake idea because if he has a German last name, German immigration really was only like 70, 80 years prior to this. So it would showcase that he is new money and he could never join the old elite. Whereas it's a huge thing is his aesthetics and his optics, and he's trying to showcase like, hey, I can be one of the old boys.
For sure, for sure.
But yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No. I don't really have much to add there. I was just gonna say, I definitely, keeping in mind that also post World War I, peak German distrust, you know.
Post World War One is peak German distrust, not post World War
Not
II?
not peak, but like peak at the time.
Okay. All right, that's fair. That's fair. We'll take that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think overall, I think the theme that I like to walk away with the most is, like I said, the failure, but also the... I'm going to turn this music down a touch on stream. I don't know if it's too loud, but it looks like it's too loud. Sorry. But I think, other than failure, I think it's the ideal behind people. Like, no one is happy with their circumstances, but all of them have achieved their dreams and have shown that it wasn't enough, because they're deeply unhappy people at their core.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's very, very much showcased here.
Deeply unhappy is...
Like, for example, I'll jump on, say, Daisy, who she liked Gatsby, right? This is revealed later, but she liked Gatsby. Really, really loved him. But she wanted to be happy with somebody who had what she dreamed would make her happy, which was the money, the power, the old money connections, the family, the strong family, you know. And she married into it with Tom, and it was great at first. And then as soon as the novelty of it wore off, she became unhappy, and him as well, because he goes around and sleeps with women, you know?
The women that he... What did he break her nose?
Oh, yeah. Also, the reason they moved from Chicago is revealed that it was because that there was like a huge thing that got in the papers about him being with a woman when he got into a car accident.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's like it shows this unhappiness isn't new, right? It literally was such a big deal they had to move away from Chicago, which I think is part of what leads into this later panic by Tom. But I think we'll get there. I think we'll go through like a chapter by chapter talk at this point.
Yeah.
I will read some lines and some scenes and whatever that I particularly stood out to me. If you have any, feel free.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to say, so there's two things I'm going to start with. One, one of my favorite lines in the entirety of The Great Gatsby. It's our opening line. Good, the music just cut perfect. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. Now,
very famous,
very famous, very like deep. It's like, wow, that's really good. So I have two things to say here. One, in retrospect, this entire story written from Nick's perspective, all he does is judge people morally.
Yes.
That literally the entire story is him criticizing and judging people and like morally grandstanding.
Yes.
But he opens with this to give himself like an air of honesty, which is something he focuses on in the story. So I will bring up a concept that I think is kind of missed on people, and that is, to a degree, Nick is a very unreliable narrator.
Oh, I 100% agree.
Very like he
Present
has
himself.
such deep biases going into the book because this is all
Yeah,
written after the fact as well, right? This isn't like as the events happen. This is him years later, like reflecting on it.
right, right. I also, that opening quote is very, very famous and very strong.
Hmm.
And in some ways, when I read this again, I think this is third this because I had to
Third
read it in
time.
high school.
Okay.
I had to read it in college. Um, but this time, I think one of the things that really hit me was like how passive Nick is as a character in his own, words. Uh, at several points in the story where it kind of does not take a things. And I think the opening quote is not necessarily like excuse explicitly, but it does kind of justify passiveness kind of happen around. I mean,
Okay. Wait. What was that? I think you were cutting out a little bit on the Discord here.
damn.
I don't know if it's like your noise gate because it doesn't seem like it's like lagging, but it
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
wasn't. It was kind of cutting. I don't know if chat got that as well or if that was just me. But I
It
feel
could
like that was
be.
a very important point you were making.
Yeah, I hope this is better. It's better. Maybe. Maybe not. Is it me?
I don't know.
Do it.
Like I said, it just feels almost like your like noise gate cutting out. But I don't know if you have like some settings or maybe it's like Discord's noise cancellation or something catching you. But
Historically, Discord hates my guts and wants me to die, so
okay, well
uh
that might be it. But so I believe I was able to piece together that you were talking about how Nick is extremely passive in this story, which I do agree
yes,
with. There's some very interesting points I'll bring up with that. But you were
yeah.
quoting or talking about a specific event.
What I was saying, I think, is the opening quote is not necessarily like an explicit excuse, but is some way kind of a lens into why he acts or the method by which he chooses to act. Right.
I
In
see what
that,
you're saying. Okay.
yeah, I would like to. Should have had it open to begin with.
It's okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I'll say so. Something that's interesting though is like Nick later will paint himself as an extremely honest guy. Like he almost says like it to a degree he's almost honest to a fault, right?
Right.
But even in here, immediately he kind of talks about how people like accused him of being a politician
Right.
because he like knew so much and he even judges them. Where is it? Let me find it. Da-da-da-da. View of normal language to a normal person, and so it came about that in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician because I was privy to the secret griefs of wild unknown men. Those confidence were unsought, blah blah blah. Where is it? Uh, for the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppressions. Which again is kind of like very, very like he's criticizing them.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So
Right. Right.
it's within the first paragraph after he talks about like, maybe you shouldn't be criticizing everyone. And he goes, and I've lived that way. But yeah, so these guys are terrible. Like they're literally plagiarizing ideas as they reveal things to me.
I yes.
Yeah. So Nick is a very interesting character in that he betrays his own moral lens but still acts within it and like doesn't address the fact that he's a hypocrite to his own points.
Right. 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 And at several points through the story, again, he just you know will choose to do nothing, but is
Yes.
in his own head. Right.
Yeah. It's all yeah, like because it's like if somebody is going to be this like moral grandstanding character, which he will like prove himself to be, he is not a non-judgmental guy. He very much criticizes all this, but then
Right.
he'll just sit there and watch like a woman get hit, and he'll be like, eh. Or like he'll learn that his cousin's husband is literally cheating on her. He becomes aware of the affair and then just like still hides it.
Yes. He becomes an enabler on two fronts at
Yes,
that
and then
point, right?
also it later enables Gatsby. Yeah, exactly.
Which again,
Oh, go ahead.
in the passive sense, he isn't necessarily making a choice. Gatsby for it. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
I
So
can kind of see my noise gating doing.
yeah, you see it where it's like your noise gate's like cutting you off on your high ends and low ends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll let you toy with that while we're continuing. But I will say, so in the beginning here as well, something to keep in mind. So the lens, because Nick is unfortunately or fortunately the lens in which the whole story is told. And so I think keeping his biases in mind and keeping his character flaws in mind are very important to understanding the events of the story and how things are presented. Here in the beginning, he literally talks about how much he hates the East Coast and the East Coast, like the East elites and all this. He's like, they're terrible. And he even talks about Gatsby, who is like, he represented everything for which I have unaffected scorn. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, and there was something gorgeous about him, about the, all this. But it's so funny because he goes back and forth flip flopping because he does end up liking Gatsby in the end, but at the beginning he despises the man.
Right. And I think there's a point at which he calls the Buchanans. I didn't write a page down for this. He specifically calls the Buchanans remotely rich, which I wrote was referring to their untouchable, disconnected richness.
Ooh,
right, which is
I
something
like
he
that.
feels like he is outside of.
Yeah. I like this one here in the beginning too, is he kind of talks about like how he really ends up liking Gatsby, but he goes, but Gatsby turned out all right in the end. It is what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams, that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men.
Oh my god!
And because this is post story, and it's like, what, you know how it ends, and it's like, Gatsby was all right in the end, but man, just everything about it and how people reacted to it in the end just like completely closed him out in his interest to like people, basically.
Which I think
quote.
retrospectively kind of frames the way he talks about people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you do wonder if Nick would have written very differently about these events if they were written while they happened and not afterwards.
Yes.
But because it's written years afterwards, you're like, very interesting. But we kind of, the rest of chapter one, I think, so the opening of chapter one, I think, is really, really good, really strong, sets up a lot of things about Nick. I think a lot of the rest of chapter one, you can kind of gloss over it. It's a lot of descriptions, a lot of setting things up. But there are a few things that I note in the way he talks about Tom immediately.
Are you talking about when he's immediately talking about Tom's physical appearance?
Yes.
I wrote down a
he
quote.
talks about Tom.
I wrote down a quote.
Please.
It's, quote, not even the effeminate swank of his riding clothes could hide the enormous power of that body.
Yes. The polo clothes, and the short shorts for the time especially, were like, yeah, that's very effeminate looking. But Tom is just such, like, he just has a body of like pure power and muscle because he used to be like a linebacker and all that, right?
Right. I think there's a point at which later on, sorry to cut you off.
Oh no, you're okay.
Later on, Daisy calls him hulking Tom.
Yes.
And Tom goes, I don't like that word, or something to that effect.
And then she repeats it.
Yes.
Just to piss him off.
Yeah.
Which I actually referenced that as well as a few other like back and forths they have here, which I think wouldn't even be notable to the story if this was written as it happened, but instead it was written afterwards, so he can latch onto those and be like, these are signs of obvious marital strain in retrospect, and so they're worth including to his story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, where was it? Yeah, her husband, among various physical accomplishments, had been one of the most powerful ends that ever played football in New Haven, a national figure in a way, one of the men who reach an acute limited excellence at 21, and everything afterward savors of anticlimax.
Ooh.
So it's a very eloquent way of saying, like, he peaked in college.
Yes.
And everything he does is to try and relive this. It's actually a very easy thing to associate Tom with is he wants to return to the past and relive his glory days.
Yeah. I think there was something I wrote down. Let me find it. About like his kind of attempts at intellectualism, right?
Hmm.
Tom.
Yes.
Where he oh, here it is. Okay, so he describes reading a book that he has very strong opinions about, right? And the book was The Rise of the Colored Empires, in
Yes.
which quote the white race will be utterly submerged, right? So it's something he I feel like whenever this comes up, whenever Tom's like uh, attempts at intellectualism come up, the way Nick frames it is like he's trying to be something as opposed to just like is intellectual, right? In that way.
So speaking on his specific attempts at being intellectual, there's also another one later, which I'll bring up when it's relevant. But to the rise of the colored empire and all of this, yes, it's it's racist, and even at the time, there were more pushes to see them as equal. We're not quite civil rights equal, but we're not quite like wow, like these people aren't human level, right? Like in terms of how somebody would be thinking.
As reductive as it is, things were better than they were before, right?
Yes. But I will point out that a reason that it would be likely that Tom holds on to something like that is he'll show later a disdain for anybody who is new money and a turn back to the time where something as simple as being like a mixed race couple is so outlandish that it can't be. And so it's a threat to him. But there are always these big nationalistic or worldwide threats that he speaks about. And they're always something that disrupts the like current order that he brings up. There's always something whenever he's being intellectual. It's always some catastrophe that's upcoming soon in the future, which kind of
Right.
shows how attached to the past he is in a way.
No, I completely agree.
Um,
I completely agree.
but yeah, here it is. Why they came east, I don't know. They'd spent a year in France for no particular reason, then drifted here. Oh no, here it was. It was now that he'd left Chicago and come east in a fashion rather than rather took your breath away. For instance, he brought a string of polo ponies from Lake Forest. It was hard to realize a man of my own generation was wealthy enough to do that. This is where it's referenced that they did like leave Chicago and come here, and then we later learned that it was because of the affair. So there's a lot of
Right.
things that are like shown here and hinted here that are example. But one of my favorite things is just after this, when they were talking about how it's a permanent move and everything. He says, I had no sight into Daisy's heart, but I felt that Tom would drift on, forever seeking, a little wistfully, for the dramatic turbulence of some irrecoverable football game, which I think is a perfect representation of all of Tom's actions throughout the book here. And I think it encapsulates to a degree everybody, where everybody is forever seeking, drifting on towards a dream or an idea that they will never achieve. For even when they do, in the case of Gatsby, it's not enough and he wants more,
Right.
which we will
Right.
get
Right.
to later. I will mention as well that when I don't remember exactly where it is in here. I'm using this as a on screen thing. So I had it like a page mark doesn't really help me, but Daisy, when talking about his body, you mentioned she calls him hulking. When was it Daisy? No, it might have been Nick. I have to remember. We're gonna control F because I know the word I'm looking for. It's the only time The word is used in the entirety of the book
Oh my god.
while describing Nick, or while describing Tom, and it's right before one of my favorite lines of his. He goes, he had changed since his New Haven years. Now he was a sturdy, straw-haired man of 30 with a rather hard mouth and a supercilious manner. Two shining, arrogant eyes had established dominance over his face and gave him the appearance of always leaning aggressively forward, which is a reference a few times. Not even the
Ooh.
effeminate swank of his riding clothes, that's the part that you mentioned, could hide the enormous power of that body. He seemed to fill those glistening boots until he strained the top lacing, and you could see a great pack of muscle shifting when his shoulder moved under his thin coat. It was a body capable of enormous leverage, a cruel body. A very interesting wording to like, he kind of like glazes how like, wow, this man's powerful.
Right.
And then goes and says that. But he
Which
says
is-
a line shortly after. I'm going to try to find while you talk.
I think it's a good setup for Tom's physicality later on, and by physicality I mean the time when he straight up breaks somebody's nose.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, here it is what I found. Continue.
I don't really have many more thoughts on that.
Okay. So something he says right after describing him as having a cruel body, we go into more description about Tom and who he is as a person and the aesthetic he tries to give off. He says, his speaking voice, a gruff, husky tenor, added to the impression of fractiousness he conveyed. There was a touch of paternal contempt in it, even toward people he liked. There were men at New Haven who hated his guts. And he says, quote, now don't think my opinion on these matters is final, he seemed to say, just because I'm stronger and more of a man than you are. We were in the same senior society. While we were never intimate, I always had the impression that he approved of me and wanted me to like him with some harsh, defiant wistfulness of his own. I think that's a really, really important piece here is him saying, don't think my opinion on these matters is final because I'm stronger and more of a man than you are. He
Right.
takes pride in his body, his masculinity, and his strength, which later in the story, despite his focus on these aesthetics and despite his focus on all of this, as soon as he's actually faced with genuine danger, he completely crumbles. He does not believe a word that he is saying here. It is merely a way that he tries to exert, he's like, look at what I am. But as soon as he faces a man who has a revolver in his pocket, it all comes crumbling down and he immediately sells everyone out.
Yeah, just straight up bravado, right?
Yeah. But yeah, we kind of went over it. So some more of the notes I had was just like, we see some of these mentions of their marital strain shows, like you said, the hulkingness. There's a few other things that are in here, but that's an easy one to jump on. You specified it. We also learn about Gatsby's name here from Jordan Baker, who's a very interesting character in her own right, but we kind of get more into her later.
Jordan Baker.
Yeah, Miss Baker. But yeah, they go over like a bunch of like random things here, like the blue nose and these other things. But when it was, let me, how do I put this? It's like a lot of the nothing that happens in the story is something, but it mostly sets up other things. You know what I mean? Like we have a lot of this talk where it's just like random back and forth to add like character to see kind of how they are and how they talk about people.
Right. And there are a lot of moments where Nick's description on our initial meeting of a particular character really plays into like their actions later on, right?
Yeah. Or at least his interpretation of their actions later on.
Yes.
Isn't that fair if you're facing the barrel of a gun? Says Dark Virus. Yeah, I mean, it's totally fair. Like, any reasonable person would be like, yeah, okay, like, I don't care. But it's just, it's meant to be a very, like, intentional thing to show that Tom is this, like, he's this hard ass. He's like, I'm stronger than you. I'm better than you. Like, this and that and this and that. And then as soon as he can, he tries to sell out Gatsby. But the thing is that's important about that point is Daisy was driving. Tom doesn't know that the idea was to that Gatsby was going to take the blame. Tom, in that action, is effectively selling out Daisy. He's willing to lose his own wife rather than like be scared of another man, right? He doesn't try to talk him down. He doesn't try to do anything. He's just like, this man's going to kill me. But also, the man wasn't there to kill him. The man was there to ask who was driving the car. His life wasn't actually in danger. I mean, you can argue, oh, he was a crazed gunman, it was in danger, which is also fair. But the point of Wilson is, as a plot device merely, is to show that everything is just like a show for these people. The rich, like the money is all used just to show, like it's purely aesthetics. Everything is purely aesthetics, right? Wilson is described several times as this like weak, frail man who can't do anything. That's why Tom doesn't respect him. That's why Tom like openly flirts with his wife in front of him, doesn't give a fuck, like pulls him for a loop about selling this coupe to him, all this stuff. Which also, as soon as Wilson is going to actually discover the affair, immediate fear takes over Tom, and he's like, "I'll have the coupe due tomorrow." the ability for him to cope with loss is like, it's embarrassingly minuscule, is what's shown. Whenever things don't go his way, he immediately folds, despite all the showing of how great and powerful he is.
The projection of wealth and power, right?
Yeah. Because a lot of people will use like an aesthetic or social power over each other in this, right? That's a very common theme to see. And Tom has shown that as soon as he can, he will use his physical power over somebody. But in the time that is arguably most important for him to do so, he immediately bows out and is scared. Because we've seen Myrtle says his wife's name and he literally just slaps her across the face, leaves her like bruised and bloody, and is like don't ever fucking say my wife's name. He doesn't care because somebody is socially far enough under him that he knows there won't be consequences. But as soon as there's consequences that are potential, he kind of bows out, right? So it's like his physical power is just for show.
Right. I think the book as a whole does a good job of showing like the weakness of the rich, I guess, for lack of a better term for it. But like, it's just that these people are using what they can to get what they want, but once they realize that doesn't work, everything falls apart, right?
Yeah. Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth. Yeah, and that is true as well. Debunk says strong body, weak constitution. And in a way, it's like he does have the strong body, but he is very mentally weak, which is also shown in the way that he's intellectual that Hiyoshi brought up earlier. Like he's intellectual in like the worst ways. It's extremely performative. It's all aesthetics, social standing. We later learned that these people that go to all these big parties and stuff, it's a very interesting scene is when they're in Gatsby's library and he remarks, wow, these aren't just cardboard, they're real books.
Yes.
Because it's like, most of these people know that everything is just a show. That the idea of spending the money to get real books, to put real books in a library instead of just like fake cardboard, like facsimiles of it's such a profound thing to do that he's like, wow, I would never have expected that of somebody. Because it's just not expected that you would. There's kind of a silent agreement between all these rich people that, like, we're just doing this for show. We're not actually this way, you know?
All of them know it. All of them are complicit in it, right?
Yeah. And then we go over like the rest of chapter 1. We're kind of, I don't know if you have anything else to say, but it's like they kind of just are like talking. they go over the phone call where they're trying to like listen in. And this is where it's revealed later that Jordan Baker's like, hey, just so you know, he literally has a woman and goes into town with her all the time. And this is when Nick just like doesn't tell Daisy. So
Passive.
yeah, he's very,
Passive
very
enabler.
passive. Very much doesn't hold his beliefs.
Yes. Yes. Straight up tells us.
Yeah, and then we meet at the very end. It's a very interesting meeting, like our first showing of. Oh, I did want to mention that after Nick and Daisy are talking alone, and Daisy's kind of like saying some stuff about Tom. When Tom comes back as a way to again save face, because that's his real focus, is he's like, "Don't believe everything you hear," knowing that like Daisy was probably talking something that he didn't want known.
Right.
So
a little clue for us to maybe suspect all of the ways everyone is presented and all of the events are presented, right? Maybe,
yeah.
potentially.
Something interesting in here as well is the fact that Daisy and Tom do have a child. And almost
Do we
like
ever see the kid?
we do.
I can't
We
remember.
see the
We
child
do?
one time at the very end of the story, but she's referenced here in chapter 1, the daughter. And because there's a line that Daisy says where she asks after giving birth if it's a boy or girl. She told me it was a girl, so I turned my head away and wept. All right, I
Oh,
said,
God.
I'm glad it's a girl, and I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool. So, and she's already like projecting some stuff onto her own daughter at that point.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll later see like the child does not matter. They're not raising their child. A nanny is, and it's just it's really a status symbol. Like, look, oh, we have a child together. You know. There's a line later, actually that I'll bring up now while talking about it. Let me find it. I have it in my notes. There's a song that is being sung in one of the chapters.
I remember this. I remember this too.
And it mentions children. Yeah, here it is. In the background, while like one of the scenes going on, there's a song that says, "One thing sure and nothing surer. The rich get richer and the poor get children. In the meantime, in between time." So yeah, it's like they literally do not care about their children. It's merely an existence, like a means to an end.
They're set dressing, right?
Yeah, that's what everything is. Dog and Pony
Yes.
Show, true debunked. But yeah, so I wanted to mention, yeah, so he is told about Mr. Gatsby. He learns that Gatsby is his neighbor, and after all the events of chapter 1, he returns home and he sees the silhouette of a cat, whatever, it kind of draws his eyes, and he eventually sees that from the shadow of the mansion is Gatsby standing like with his hands in his pocket, and he's just staring out forward, right? Nick says he was going to call out to him, but he didn't because there was this like idea that he was content to be alone there. And at this point, Nick mentions he sees Gatsby reach out towards the water in a curious way. And he could have sworn that he was trembling. He glances seaward and distinguished nothing except a single green light, minute and far away, that might have been the end of a dock. When I looked once more for Gatsby, he had vanished. Which we later learn that the first time we meet Gatsby, he's trembling and reaching out towards Daisy. That green light is on the Buchanan's dock. So it's just it's a nice little thing where it's like the first time we see him is literally just how important this is to him. He's trembling in the dark, reaching out towards Daisy. His goal and his dream.
I might be getting ahead of myself here, but his pursuit, obviously, by the end is his undoing, right?
Yeah. And like I mentioned, it's like he pursued, and it's never enough for him. I'll get into it when we get
Yes.
there as we go through the chapter by chapter, but there's a couple interesting scenes. Um, chapter two, it's I actually think chapter two probably has like the least importance to the story.
Agreed. Agreed. It's a little bit fluff.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm pouring my tea into my cup real quick.
You are totally fine.
All right. So yeah, it's very fluff. What did you take away from the chapter? Anything of note, anything of interest?
Let's see. Let's go through the notes. I didn't. I didn't define which notes were in which chapter, so I'm guessing.
If you mentioned the
Here we go.
billboard, that's the start of chapter two,
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay.
which is in my opinion, probably the most important part about the chapter is these glowing eyes, which I'm sure people have seen time and time again, that the eyes are these giant blue, gigantic eyes that stare down upon everybody in a way that is symbolic of, you know, there's a lot of things. It's just of like the watchful eyes. Um, Wilson famously refers to them as the eyes of God when he looks upon them.
Yes. 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 Let's see.
Yeah, so that's like, in my opinion, that's the most important thing.
I think Myrtle's initial introduction.
Yeah.
I don't have a specific quote. I did write down like page 25 ish, where she's kind of described in a way that's like, I wrote this down, more vibrant and alive, but I'm not sure if that's a direct quote. Uh,
More vitality, something like that. Yeah, I don't have the
yeah,
exact quote
yeah.
written down. I'll find it.
She's being compared to Daisy at this
Yes.
point, right? And the way she acts around Tom is described to be, you know, again in my words, or potentially a quote. I'm not sure which because I did this part last night. More vibrant and alive, right?
There was an immediately perceptible vitality about her.
Yes, there we go.
Is the exact quote they use.
There we
Yeah,
go.
I think
There we
it
go.
is very interesting though, right? So Tom meets Nick and is like, "Oh yeah, you're my wife's cousin. Wow, this is cool. So anyway, come in town and meet my mistress that I'm cheating on your cousin with, by the way."
Yeah, yeah. Let's go to a party.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, wouldn't that be awesome, Nick? It really, like, these first chapters really kind of solidify like the fact that Tom really feels untouchable,
Yes.
which is why it's important when he is touchable how he crumbles. When he realizes that all the power, all the physical power, all the money all the status, all the social game, everything he's done his entire life in the face of a weak, frail, sickly man with a revolver and the desire for revenge is nothing.
I think that's a good way to put it, Desano. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I was saying, like, it's very important that he builds Tom up as this like untouchable pillar of the status of the rich, of the powerful, of this, right? We
Right.
see it on money, we see it in physical power and all that, but again, in the face of reality, it doesn't mean anything. I think it's a very interesting and important part.
I think so too, and I think again, this whole chapter kind of just serves to like set us up for the relationships between the characters, the dynamics between the characters specifically. Like, uh, is this the chapter where Tom breaks Myrtle's nose? I'm going through my notes. Yes, it absolutely is.
Yes. It is also a point where while walking down the street, there's a scammer with a dog. Tom knows it's a scammer because the guy's like, "Oh, it's a male dog," and he's like, "It's female. You're wrong." He's like, "Here's your money. Go buy 10 more dogs with it." Like he knows it's being scammed, it's being ripped off, but the money means so little to him that he's just like, "Here you go. That way I can get my mistress the dog that she thinks is cute. It doesn't fucking matter. Like I don't care." Yeah. Um, very interesting as well is at this point we learn with zero uncertain terms that her sister Catherine is aware and borderline um oh god, I'm trying to think of the term. Not like
Hmm.
approving, but like
She's complicit in it,
not
right?
not just complicit, like she almost like helps her with it, right?
Right.
Um there's a word that I just can't think of right now. But yeah, that her sister is that. Later, after Myrtle gets run over, her sister's like, no, she's great. She was faithful. I have no idea what anybody is talking about. This is crazy. Where did this come from? So it's just like it is interesting. Like everybody in this story is so focused on perception. Perception, perception, perception. Social power is the huge dynamic at play in every single scene that happens.
Right. It's less about, oh, obviously less about authenticity and honesty and more about like
Mhm.
how you are perceived.
Which is exactly why Nick tried to separate himself, and he is the honest and all that guy. But we know that that's also just untrue.
Right.
He tries to separate himself from these people. Perception is arguably much power to the objective truth, says Debunked. I'd like you to elaborate on that as we continue through this lowly chapter 2 that really doesn't have a lot going on. Yeah, we just
Where's the content?
it's wow, look, we're meeting all these people. Oh, all this. Yeah, I want to get to the part where he busts her nose.
Dude, yeah.
Uh,
I think
I
I
don't
have
see
a page marker.
I don't see
Is
it.
it? I wrote down page 37 for some reason.
37? Here, let me pull out my
Yeah.
copy. I'll see if that's chapter 2. Okay, so it should be just before the end.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
here it is. The little dog was sitting on the table with blind eyes through the smoke, blah 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 blah. Just a few feet away, sometime toward midnight, Tom and Mrs. Wilson stood face to face discussing in impassioned voices whether Mrs. Wilson had any right to mention Daisy's name. Daisy, 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 shouted Mrs. Wilson. I'll say it whenever I want to. Daisy did. With a short, deft movement, Tom Buchanan broke her nose with his open hand. Literally an open hand slap so powerful he breaks her nose.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Because again, what can she do to him socially?
Right.
Nothing.
There are no consequences for this
Yeah.
person.
Oh, perception is arguably much more powerful than the objective truth. Yeah. Yeah. I would say with a lot of people, that is the case. The truth does not matter. It's merely how things are perceived. A lot of people, that's how they care about things, especially in this story. But even in real life, very, very much is the case.
VTubers.
What's funny is after he breaks her nose, there's bloody towels on the bathroom floor, women's voices scolding high over the confusion, over the long broken wail of pain. Uh, I think this Catherine woke up and like goes to the door. It's a whole thing, but at the end, she's bleeding, all this stuff, and nobody says or does anything, and they just kind of go, okay. But to an extent, this is still 1920s America. Women are still very much subjects to their husband, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and exactly. Debunk says, even here with the broken nose, given Tom's status, he can spin the story to put him in a better light despite the objective fact that he struck her. Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, like, he could just be like, why is this peasant woman out without her husband, like, intruding on me? What is she talking about? An affair? She's out of her mind. This is crazy talk. I would never cheat on my lovely wife. Like, that's all he has to say. And then he pays a bunch of newspapers to print it, and he's good. It's as good as truth.
With functionally like a wave of his hand, right?
Yeah. basically, with less force than it took to break her nose.
Was that something that was specifically written? I don't remember that one.
No, that was just me saying it.
Hard. The line goes hard to Sato.
But it is interesting seeing. I will say one thing that's interesting about chapter 2 is it's a showcase of 3 different married characters, right? Catherine, Myrtle, and Tom. All of them looking for happiness. All of them had a hope that happiness would, that marriage would give them their happiness. And yet here they all are unfulfilled, breaking the like honor and devotion that should be a marriage. Because they're still just hollow and empty on the inside, right?
Right. In slightly different ways, of course, but yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because here it was Myrtle talks about when she got married, and Catherine says, Myrtle says, I married him because I thought he was a gentleman. She said finally, I thought he knew something about braiding, but he wasn't fit to lick my shoe. Right?
Damn.
So she has all these ideas about him, but it like she married him. Oh yeah, and here's Catherine where she goes, I almost made a mistake too. She declared vigorously, I almost married a little slur for Jewish man who'd been after me for years. I knew he was below me. Everybody kept saying to me, Lucille, that man's way below you. But if I hadn't met Chester, he'd have got me for sure. But yet still she's sitting here like engaging with cheating and all this stuff. Like clearly she's not actually that happy. She talks about she just keeps like going and doing stuff and doesn't really care. Doesn't really care about her marriage. Myrtle's sitting here, you know, thought he was a gentleman, thought he knew this stuff. He didn't. And then Catherine's like, but you were crazy about him. And Myrtle's like, what are you talking about? I was never any more crazy about him than the man there. And she points at Nick, who's just like a random guy, right? She really tries to show like she's reframing reality to fit the narrative and explanation as to like, look, of course it's okay for me to cheat on my husband. I never loved him. It was just like he's not the man that he said he was, you know. But yeah, so it's a very interesting point about my point that they don't care. Like they're all chasing a dream that they'll never achieve, and they put these grand ideas and these grand dreams onto another person who can never live up to it. There's a specific line from Gatsby later that will go over that very, very, very explicitly, and we'll get there when we get there.
I think that's interesting because Nick definitely does that with Gatsby at certain points, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's not just like exclusively the romantic way, but it's very much these people have this perception or like they want to be saved from something or something of that nature, and they put that idea onto another person and almost get offended and mad when the person can't live up to their ideal.
Right.
But
right. And from Nick, we get that betrayal of his initial quote, right?
Yeah. But yeah, so that's really all I had to say about chapter 2. I have some stuff for chapter 3 if you're ready. I don't know if you have anything more.
No, I think you're covering more than I did in my notes.
That's okay. Honestly. So full disclosure to anybody who doesn't know, a little behind the scenes knowledge here is I lost all my handwritten notes and had to hastily scrawl together what I could remember of my notes and briefly rereading the entirety of Great Gatsby last night to rewrite notes so that I could still continue with this discussion in book club. And I, from now on, whenever I take my handwritten notes, if I'm out and about, I'm taking a picture of them. So if I lose them, I won't lose everything because that was a huge mistake and it cost me dearly.
Oh man.
But yeah, so glad to hear that.
I also read this entire thing last night and today. So
yeah, Yeah, I will, for the next one, it's going to be a much shorter. It's going to be a small short story. I'll reveal it at the end of this. But I will also like post reminders. So
Yeah, we knew
this
this
time, I don't have
Discord.
somebody that's like, "Hey, when's your book club again?" And I'm like, "This like literally a week from now." And then he goes, "Oh shoot, I got to read it." Not naming names.
It's me.
I was, the memes from Dexter where it's like the black guy, I don't remember his name, where he's just like staring into the camera.
Dokes, yeah.
Yeah. That was that was the stare I just did as I said that. But yeah, so chapter 3. This is where we really see the insides of Gatsby's parties.
Right.
So I don't know what you have written here.
I wrote about how Nick kind of immediately like felt out of place. All right.
Okay.
There's that like feeling of he's surrounded by opulence again.
Yes.
And I wrote the word for word. I'll read it out as I wrote. He's so oblivious to his immediate surroundings. Even when he gets invited to the party, he just wanders around until someone tells him where to go. You know, that like he doesn't know what he's doing there. He's not sure why he's there, kind of feeling. But he knows like he very much wants to be there. There's that curiosity, right?
Yeah. Curiosity to like who Gatsby is and who this like fancy opulent neighbor is and all this.
Right.
But something to note, well, a couple things to note is I mentioned that Gatsby is throwing these parties in a way that is like showcasing quote unquote like unlimited wealth, right? The parties literally never end. This isn't like a normal rich person like, oh, let's throw parties on Saturday or something. Like this is I don't care what day of the week it is, my parties never stop. And he's been doing this for years. It never is specifically stated, but you can kind of assume that he's been doing this for 5 years. Literally nightly parties.
I think where were they every Saturday or something like that? Everyone just shows up. Nobody even like gets invited, right?
Yeah. So they're not just on Saturdays. I don't know if they specify a day, but really it's like it's kind of portrayed as like the party never ends because it's like I think at one point they say like everybody gets out, blah blah blah. The next morning, the servants have repaired and fixed it all up, and the party starts back up again.
I have more to say about the parties once we get to the point.
Yeah.
Where they, you know.
I will state one thing that's interesting that is very specifically mentioned in this chapter is that Nick was personally invited to the party. And like you said,
Right.
most people just show up. It specified that he is one of the few guests who was actually invited.
Which is important.
Yes, which obviously we learned Gatsby had a plan.
A use for him.
The worst neighbor, true debunked. I would lose my mind if I lived next to Gatsby. Oh my god! And then it's like, what are you going to do? Oh, let me call the cops. And as we later learn, Gatsby has some deals with the cops because when he's like speeding and the officer pulls him over, he just shows him a little thing, and the officer's like, "Oh, my bad," and just lets him go. So it's like, even if you were, you couldn't even call the cops on this man.
It's a good time to be a rich white guy.
Shoot, it was just a good time to be rich, period. You could be Italian and they still liked you.
Yeah, man.
And to note, that's like not like a joke. Italians were still not really seen as being white during this time period. They were kind of shifting towards them being white, but they weren't accepted as being white yet. Same as the Irish.
That's true of a lot of. Yeah, I was literally about to mention that. Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot like anyone Mediterranean, anyone that was kind of like a. What's the word? Damn, I can't think of the word. I need to sleep better. I keep losing words. Like I want to say like enslaved, but they're not quite enslaved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Conquered, like all like the conquered peoples, I guess maybe in a way. But yeah. Anyway, So I mentioned like this display of unlimited wealth at his parties, right? Nick was invited. Like you kind of mentioned, Nick felt super out of place. He was literally alone getting drunk until he meets Miss Jordan Baker again.
Right.
And I think this is their second meeting at this point. And she says she expected to see him here, surprisingly. Another thing I'll say is there's a small passage. I don't know if I can find it. Right in here. Here it is. Lucille, one of the like random women that's talking with Jordan Baker, while like right as Nick was kind of approaching. She goes, "I like to come," Lucille said. "I never care what I do, so I always have a good time. When I was here last, I tore my gown on a chair, and he asked me my name and address. Inside of a week, I got a package from Croyers with a new evening gown in it." And she goes, "Oh, did you keep it?" Asked Jordan. "Sure I did. I was going to wear it tonight, but it was too big in the bust and had to be altered. It was a gas blue with lavender beads, $265. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $5,000.
Oh my god, you did the math already? Hell yeah.
Yeah, so he literally like doesn't care. He's like, "Oh, someone tore a dress at my party." But they mention where they go, "There's something funny about a fellow that'll do a thing like that," said the other girl eagerly. "He doesn't want any trouble with anybody," with an emphasis on any. Right. And this is when Nick jumps in. He goes, "Who doesn't?" And someone says, "Gatsby." And then they start all these rumors, right? Because no one really knows Gatsby, where they're like, "I heard he's a murderer, like he killed a man. That's how he got the money." Someone's like, "I heard he was a German spy during the war." And they're like, and this was a guy I knew that grew up with him in Germany that told me this. Like, the amount of gossiping and like crazy talk about him, right? We talk about perception, how important it is to control perception for somebody like Tom. Then you have Gatsby, who is just over the top, extravagant, and doesn't give a fuck how these people feel about him. Not even remotely concerned. Because there's only one person he cares about his perception to. Daisy. His sole focus. But it's very interesting because somebody like Tom, where they're willing to move away because of the gossip, right? They like the story of his affair, which he could probably have still downplayed, got into the newspaper, and the reaction is to move out of Chicago and go out east.
Just get away from it.
Yep. Because that's how much it like matters to them. So like if there were these kind of gossiping going on about the Buchanans, he would be immediately on that trying to fix it. But yeah, so I thought that was just interesting. Also, it's like they give a dinner for everybody that's there, and there's a second dinner after midnight. I think is pretty funny.
I do that sometimes.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
This is the part where he sees the owl-eyed man, who I think he just refers to as Owl Eyes because he has the owl-eyed spectacles. I don't think this man ever gets a name. He's one of the only people that show up to Gatsby's funeral, by the way. It's Nick, Gatsby's father, and then Owl Eyes. You would not assume this guy is a friend or anything, and he's not. He's literally not even named. But yeah, he talks about all the books, and he's like, "Look, they're real. They have pages." Like he's like, it's a bona fide piece of printed matter. But yeah, he's like, "What thoroughness? Well, realism. Knew when to stop too. Didn't cut the pages. All this stuff." Something that's interesting is that he says he snatched the book from me and replaced it hastily on the shelf, muttering that if one brick was removed, the whole library was liable to collapse. Which I don't think is a literal, but I think it means the perception of it. Like he still knows that it's just even though they're real books to show like his opulence and wealth, the books are all there in a specific order in a way to have a look to them. I don't think it's so precarious that it's about to fall over.
It's still just a symbol, right?
Yeah, it's still just a symbol, and each book is like meticulously placed to be that symbol. But yeah, so very interesting.
There is one thing
Yeah.
I wrote later.
Oh, we got a lot. This first party I think is a big part of Gatsby, right?
Yeah. There's a line, or there's something. Page 59 is where I have it, which is a little bit ahead, I think, of where we are, right?
Let me see. 59.
I think
Oh,
so.
I know exactly what you're talking about with Jordan Baker with the rotten driver
Yeah.
part,
Yeah,
which also
yeah.
gets referenced again at the end by her. We're not quite there. I do have one thing to say, I think, before then. Let me see. Yeah, I have quite a bit to say before we get there, but if you want to, we can jump.
Oh yeah. No. Go ahead. Let's do it.
All right. So, one of the first things I'll say is, I think it's very funny how Nick meets this man and he's sitting there and I think they're eating supper at this point. Bowls of champagne. Something was more profound. Yeah, I think they're just sitting there. No, they're dancing. It's just like a lull in the moment, basically. At a
Right.
lull in the entertainment, the man looked at me and smiled. He goes, "Your face is familiar. Weren't you in the first division during the war?" And he goes, "Yeah, I was the 28th Infantry because Nick served." He goes, "Oh, I was 16th until June 1918. I knew I'd seen you before." They kind of talk. They're like, "Oh yeah, we both were in the war." All this, and he goes, he mentions like, "Hey, I just bought this hydroplane. You want to go out with me in the morning?" He goes, "Want to go with me, old sport? Just near the shore along the Sound." He goes, "What time? Whatever time suits you best." Right. Gatsby, we learn later that this guy's like, where is it? He goes, Jordan goes, "Hey, having a gay time, which is having a happy time now." And he goes, "Much better, thanks to my new acquaintance." Basically, he goes, "It's an unusual party for me. I haven't seen the host. I live over there." And he waves to the other house, to his house. But then this man Gatsby sent over a chauffeur with an invitation, and then he looks at him and he's like, kind of like confused, like, "I'm Gatsby," which I thought was very very funny. But he goes, he smiled understandingly, much more than understandingly. It was one of those rare smiles with a quality of eternal reassurance in it that you may come across 4 or 5 times in life. That was very interesting. Like, Gatsby is not offended or caring at all about he's like, "It's all good. I get it.
Right.
I'm a very odd host. All makes sense." And he kind of goes into describes him a little bit more, but and he immediately asks Jordan Baker, he's like, "So what's up with this guy?" You know what I mean? And he kind of she explains his whole origin, where it's like, "Oh, he's an Oxford man," but I don't believe it. And this is referred several times, where the hole in Gatsby's story is the fact that he calls himself an Oxford man.
Yes.
Which is also the linchpin of his lie. But go ahead.
I remember just the way they write the word Oxford with 2 G's.
Oh, that's specifically by the one guy who it's kind of to explain his slur and low classness of the criminal.
His manner of speaking, right?
Yeah, Oxford. Anytime there's an X or a hard sound, it becomes a 2 G's for it.
Yeah.
But when she said it, it's just Oxford.
Right.
She's a higher up society. She knows how to say Oxford. How dare you?
Educated.
But yeah,
Rich.
but this is a linchpin of his lie, right? Because he changed his name to Gatsby, so he has to be Old English money, and all Old English money goes to Oxford. In fact, when he finally reveals that he's like, "Okay, I'm not an Oxford man. I did go to Oxford for 6 months though," which was really funny. But yeah,
we're
there was. Oh, and then this is when Jordan Baker gets asked to Gatsby alone, and she was like, "Me?" Very surprisingly, which we very, very much later, I think, learned that basically for the last 5 years running these parties, Gatsby would just randomly ask anybody if they had connections to Daisy.
Right.
And she just so happened to be the first one that's like, "Yeah, I do." Also, this guy over here is her cousin.
Which cues up Gatsby's interest in Nick.
Which I would say actually retrospectively, Although I think it's presented that this scene is when it happened. I think Jordan says that. I think Miss Baker says that later. Um, I think it's pretty obvious that she's lying when she says that, which she is described as like a dishonest liar. Because Gatsby never bothered to invite Nick until after he met Jordan Baker and is introduced as Daisy's cousin.
Right.
So I think it's obvious that she had been trying to work with Gatsby for a while, and the reason she was probably pulled aside here was talking about, how's Nick, how do I do this, blah 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 kind of thing. It was probably like, oh, just invite him and we'll see how it goes. And she was invited to that party too, to like make sure he had someone so he didn't just leave, right? And Gatsby never introduced himself to her or to him. And I think the reason that Gatsby didn't properly introduce himself to him isn't just because he's weird. We'll see later how nervous he gets about the idea of meeting Daisy. I think he was so nervous that it like slipped his mind. Because he becomes a nervous wreck when they meet later.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's your part. I think we can go over because there's the car wreck that happens outside after the party, which was just like, the whole scene is like wild to me. He's like, yeah, I leave, and then someone's wheel like gets detached and they're like stuck in the ditch and everyone's backed up and can't leave the road, and it's a whole mess. And it's just like a bunch of like absolutely incompetent rich people. Like the guy's like, are we out of gas? And they're like, no, the wheel fell off, because he's obviously drunk too. And they're like, He's like, at first I didn't even notice we stopped. And they were like, I wonder if there's a gas station, like, and then he's like, what if we try putting it in reverse? Like, just absolutely fucking clueless as to how a vehicle works at all and drunk out of their mind. It's just such a weird, funny scene that just kind of like happens.
More service for incompetent wealth, or
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Very much so. I'm kind of like reading along as we
yeah
do this. So the wheels off. No harm in trying. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The whole the no harm in trying part, right? Where he's just
I'm just like what like completely clueless and incompetent. They're just like, oh, it's new and expensive, I have to have one. But yeah, so I think something interesting here as far as who Nick is as a character, and we kind of talked about his moral grandstanding. It really comes in here, right? He goes, reading over what I've written so far, I see I have given the impression that the events of 3 nights several weeks apart were all that absorbed me. On the contrary, they were merely casual events in a crowded summer, and until much later, they absorbed me infinitely less than my personal affairs. He kind of distances himself and puts him like morally above everything that's happening with the way he does that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And he's like, look, I'm just like a low-to-do, like middle class, like normal guy. I'm working. Look, I'm doing my bonds. I had this short affair with a girl. All this stuff. Like he really is just like, come on, guys. Like, I'm just like you to the readers and all this. Because in a way, he's trying to save his own social standing to the readers. Right? Not during the events, but to the readers and the people reading. He's like, no, you can trust me. I'm not one of them. Because he is writing this, like he even says, reading over what I've written so far. So he's writing this afterwards, and he's writing it to an audience. He knows he's making a book about it. Yeah, I thought it was just very interesting.
Find the portion that I wrote about.
The portion you're talking about is like right after that, where it goes blah 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 blah. For a while, I lost sight of Jordan Baker, and then I found her again. At first, I was flattered to go places with her because she was a golf champion, all this stuff. And then was it? They were at a house party up in Warwick, which, by the way, he's just like at another house party that's not even Gatsby's, kind of like casually mentioned here. He's sitting here like separating himself from this, but he's also just going to other house parties as well, right?
Right.
And this is where it says she left a borrowed car out in the rain with a top down and then lied about it. And suddenly I remembered the story about her that eluded me that night at Daisy's. At her first big golf tournament, there was a row that nearly reached the newspapers. Which, very interesting. How did he hear about it if it only nearly reached the newspapers? But a suggestion that she had moved her ball from a bad lie in the semifinal round. The thing approached the proportions of a scandal, then died away. A caddy retracted his statement, and the only other witness admitted that he might have been mistaken. The incident and the name had remained together in my mind. But yeah, so, and he says she instinctively avoids like clever, shrewd men. And he says it's because she feels safer on a plane where any divergence from a code would be thought impossible. She was incurably dishonest. She wasn't able to endure being at a disadvantage. And given this unwillingness, I suppose she had begun dealing in subterfuge when she was very young in order to keep that cool, insolent smile turned to the world and yet satisfy the demands of her hard, jaunty body. And he goes, but it made no difference. Dishonesty in women is a thing you never blame deeply. I was casually sorry, and then I forgot.
Insane.
But yeah, he goes, it was that same house party. We had a curious conversation about driving a car, which is what you wanted to talk about.
Right. Where Daisy's mentioned to be...
Where
was it Daisy? No.
This is where Jordan's mentioned to be a...
Jordan.
She's mentioned to be a terrible driver. Or a rotten driver, he says. Right?
Right.
This is what you're talking about?
It takes two to make an accident, was something I wrote down.
Which is very interesting, right?
Right.
Because in a way, it's a parallel to the story of everything that's happening. Not only an actual accident, which did take two people, but also just all of their intermingled lives, right? It's never one person doing something that leads to these actions. It's both parties doing something that leads to the absolute tragedy that takes place, right? Gatsby sitting here liking Daisy and nothing ever comes of it, but once Daisy finds out and Daisy likes him back, that's when things go south, right? It takes two people to make an accident. But yeah, he mentions here, after all that, where after it takes two to make an accident, he goes, suppose you met somebody just as careless as yourself. She goes, I hope I never will. I hate careless people, and that's why I like you. Which is funny because he mentions like she had doing that. She deliberately shifted our relations. And for a moment, I thought I loved her, but I'm slow thinking and full of interior rules that act as brakes on my desires. And I knew that first I had to get myself definitely out of that tangle back home. He's like, I can't be with this woman. This is going to be a huge mess.
Get me out of here.
But then he goes, I've been writing letters once a week and signing them Love Nick. And all I could think of was how, when that certain girl played tennis, a faint mustache of perspiration appeared on her upper lip. Nevertheless, there was a vague understanding that had to be tactfully broken off before I was free. And then he says one of my other favorite lines about himself. Everyone suspects himself of at least one of the cardinal virtues, and this is mine. I am one of the few honest people that I have ever known.
Yes, I wrote this down as well.
Yeah. Calling himself one of the few honest people that he's ever known. Very interesting. Because he lies constantly, and he, especially by omission.
It just clears him of any, like, agency, I guess, moving forward. Right?
Yeah.
Like, none of the rest of the things that happen, are kind of my fault in that way.
It's funny because he's calling himself honest, and yet here he is not telling his cousin about an affair, not talking about the fact that he watched her husband break his mistress's nose, lets all this stuff go by. Even talking about like Jordan Baker, he's like, yeah, I got to break free from her. I can't do this. And then he's like, immediately he's lying to himself to the point that he gets like lost in it, you know? He lies to himself to the point that he may think he's honest.
I think that like kind of delusional level of self-assurance is it's important, right? It's important to keep in mind as we go on.
Yeah. And then we get chapter 4, which starts off with somebody mentioning that he's a bootlegger. And then immediately jump to like other things where he killed a man, second cousin to the devil, like all this stuff, right? They just go crazy. But when they do mention him being a bootlegger, they are in fact correct.
Right.
They just don't know it.
What was that guy's name? Shit.
You're talking about Wolfen something, right?
Wolfsheim.
Yeah, Wolfstein, something like that. We'll get to him later.
Yeah.
Very interestingly, they go over like the whole guest list here, and none of these names and none of this matters at all, except for one man. Only one man in the entirety of this, I believe, is even brought up again. It's just kind of a showing of like, look at how rich and famous these people. Oh, they do mention something interesting where there was one where Ripley Snells was there, and he goes, Snell was there 3 days before he went to the penitentiary, so drunk out of the on the gravel drive that Mrs. Ulysses Sweat's automobile ran over his right hand.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Like these people are just super rich, but they just get absolutely fucked up when they're at Gatsby's and they don't care.
And there are no consequences for any of these people.
Yeah. The only person that matters out of this list for the rest of the story is Klipspringer, who was there so often he became known as the Boarder, and it's doubted that he had any other home. Which is also funny because there's another character mentioned later who kind of did the same thing when they're talking about Daisy's wedding. A guy that was there just like pretends to know everybody and then just like stays over at Jordan Baker's house for 3 weeks to heal from an injury, quote unquote, before her father's just like get the fuck out of my house. But yeah. So it's just funny because like all of these people just do not matter. They're just random people who came. Like he says, it's like I have them still on a piece of paper, but they're completely irrelevant. It's just kind of like a funny thing to be put on there.
Right.
And then I think chapter 4, I don't have a lot of notes for, but I do think some of it's pretty important. Which is one thing that Nick mentions, more or less, this is paraphrasing, is despite sitting here hanging out with Gatsby, when he's asked like what his opinion of him is, he's like, he tries to avoid the question. Because really, Gatsby doesn't talk about himself at all, and it leads for a lot of questioning, right? And then Gatsby does something that at the time is like unthinkable, right? He raises his right hand and he goes, I will tell you God's truth. And he goes, I'm the son of wealthy people, all dead, brought up in America, educated at Oxford. It's a family tradition. And he's like, and he says, I know why Jordan Baker had believed he was lying. He hurried the phrase educated at Oxford, right? Which we do learn, or swallowed it or choked on it, as though it bothered him before, and with this doubt, his whole statement fell to pieces. I wonder if there was something a little sinister about him after all. There's a later part that's mentioned. I want to see if I can find it. I'll find it in a second. But he continues on with the story and explains like this whole made-up past that he has. Like these rubies and all this other stuff. And Nick does not buy it at all. But he displays a medal that is that it appears to be very real and a photo of himself at Oxford. War medals, and he goes, oh, okay, I guess this did. Yeah, the Montenegro medal. He's like, oh, I guess this is real. I guess this really did happen. Okay. But I want to see if I can find the line. Because it really stood out to me, and I didn't write it down, unfortunately. I can't find it, but basically, maybe it's later, but he talks about how when Gatsby tells this story, I thought it was this one, that it evokes no emotion because it just feels so rehearsed.
Right, these are the things he tells people.
Yeah, like it's not like, oh, this really happened. It was more like just a story he passed off. I can't find the exact quote. I wish I wrote it down. I could swear it happened here, but maybe I'm wrong. But anyway. Yeah, this is when we later we get the part where they're driving and they get pulled over by the motorcycle and he's just let off because he has connections, which obviously are like underground illicit connections we learn later, but connections no less. You have anything else to add here?
Not particularly. My notes at this point, from this point forward, are sparse.
Okay. Hey, that's all right. Yeah, I can't find it, but I could have swore it was in here. Anyway, that's my fault for not recording the exact quote. Anyhow, yeah, we get to the part where they're driving and he gets pulled over and he's like, "What was that?" And he's like, "Oh, it was the Christmas card from the commissioner." Right? So it's like, "Oh, okay." Doesn't really think anything of it.
Right.
But this is when they meet Mr. Wolfsheim. Wolfsheim? I don't know. It's IEM. Could go either way. Who, as we know, is a criminal. He doesn't really hide that he's a criminal either. Like, he makes it very obvious that he's, like, in illicit deals.
Doesn't he have cufflinks made of, like, bone or teeth or something?
Molars,
I can't remember.
yes. Molars, which were very, they're from hits.
Yeah.
But yeah. And we learn very, very quickly that he was the guy who fixed the World Series in 1919, which let me find out who that actually was. That's who this guy's based on. That's a real thing that happened, by the way.
Really? Really?
The Black Sox scandal.
Interesting. I know nothing about this.
Arnold Rothstein. Whatever it is. Yeah, it was 8 Chicago White Sox players in an event that became known as the Black Sox scandal. Shoeless Joe Jackson, a very, very famous player, was involved in it too. It was a bunch of like really famous, but they agreed to intentionally lose the series in exchange for money from gamblers. And it was Arnold Rothstein was widely believed to be the mastermind behind it, but they could never pin it on him.
Dude, sidestep here. Baseball was so cool back then.
It still
there were fights and fucking like it was a brutal game.
Oh yeah, they got brutal about it, especially when you're talking about the World Series. There's money on the line.
Yeah. I have
but yeah, all 8 of them got banned from playing in 1921 when it came out. But yeah, it was the baseball. You know how like there's commissioners for each sport now? They didn't really have that, and that kind of happened because of that, because they wanted somebody that could like restore faith in the institution. There's even a mention here where it's like fixing the World Series, like that's destroying the faith of thousands of people that have been, or like hundreds of thousands of people that have been there for decades. Just it's like one man doing it on a whim, basically.
Right. Which again, we're moving further towards the whole like the idea of power, right? Like the idea
rich
of
people.
Yeah. Rich people.
But yeah, and then it's like they mention, one of the things he mentions is he liked the restaurant across the street, but there was like a hit there, so they don't eat there anymore.
Right.
Where a guy went outside and just got fucking blasted full of bullets. And yeah, this is when we learned that he has like the weird talking disorder because he says business connection instead of connection.
Right.
Yeah, he just like weirdly struggles with anything that's like a hard C, hard K, or the X sound.
Understandable.
But it's funny
And
because he
reasonable.
talks all this stuff about the underworld and the criminal parts and all this. And he's like, but yeah, so you're looking for the business connection. And then Gatsby's like, oh no, this isn't the man. And then he's just like, oh, okay. My bad. I had the wrong guy.
Right.
It's just so funny. Just how careless this guy kind of is in a way, but never quite pins himself. So, and this guy kind of like corroborates the story of him being Oxford educated, all this stuff. But
yeah,
not a lot to add here. This is when we go. Mayor Wolfsheim. No, he's a gambler, which Gatsby hesitated, and he goes, "Yeah, he's the man who fixed the World Series back in 1919."
Which is an insane piece of knowledge, by the way, and a good way to show us that he's connected to some shady people, right?
Yeah, and it's like at this point, it would have been something very recent, right?
Right.
Whenever this book was penned, it was like just coming out, like, and they'd really taken action against it. So people reading that must have been drooling over it, like, oh my god, you know, really connects them to like real life. There's an interesting part that happens here, where they meet up with Jordan Baker and oh, no, not quite. Sorry, they meet up with Tom, where they'll later talk about Jordan Baker, but they meet up with Tom, who's in there, and he goes, "Oh, Mr. Buchanan, this is Mr. Gatsby," and he's gone. Like,
yeah,
they shook hands, right? But Gatsby is just like, he's not mentally there, and he literally just like dips out as quick as he can. He is not ready to face Tom yet. It really kind of shows. Yeah, it goes, they shook hands briefly and a strained, unfamiliar look of embarrassment came over Gatsby's face. Just a very, like, interesting bit there.
Oh, God. Sorry.
Continuing on, I'll just say, they jump to when Nick is talking with Jordan Baker and kind of going over their past and all this, and she mentions how when Daisy was 18, Gatsby knew her and loved her and all this stuff, right? And how like everyone thought they were, you know, she was like, yeah, this is like the man that she really loved and all this. But after the armistice, things went bad. She kind of like bounced between men and all this stuff. But she mentions that she gets married to Tom Buchanan. Something that I think is interesting here, and I think it's implied but pretty obvious, is Daisy had never gotten drunk before, but she gets drunk the day before her wedding, right?
Right.
And she was just in absolute like hysterics, getting drunk, wanting to cancel the wedding and all this. They never mentioned what was in it, but she had a letter that she squeezed in her hand and was put in the tub, and it became a wet ball and disintegrated. Nobody knows what the letter was, but I think it's pretty well implied that it was something Gatsby wrote to her.
Right, like back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, because he mentions that he hated that he got stuck after the armistice in Oxford. And so after the armistice and all this, right? And she's like getting ready and he's still stuck. I have to assume that he probably sends a letter that he's coming back finally or something. And that's why she like gets these cold feet and is like in hysterics trying to determine like who she wants to go with and thinking that it's a mistake and all this. But yeah, so that goes over that. A note that they have very, very quickly in here is that the next year, Daisy has their little girl, And immediately they go to France for a year, presumably just like leaving the girl with the nanny and not bringing her.
Her and Tom just fuck off.
Like, it's not specified, but it's pretty well understood. Like, you're not going to go spend a year in France and bring your like newborn baby.
Right. Tesaro, I have to BRB. I need to do a dog thing.
Okay, I'll just keep talking.
Okay.
You can jump in when you're back with whatever notes you've got. Thank you, though. I appreciate having somebody to turn to.
Yeah. I'll be right back.
All right, so we're going to continue running this my way. Yeah, so I think that was an interesting part. And then they kind of go over that Daisy was like super madly in love with Tom for a while. Like, she's like, I've never seen somebody that madly in love. Like, Tom would be gone for like 5 minutes and she's like, where's Tom? Where's Tom? Like, I need to, like, literally just completely head over heels in love. And then it fades over time. And this is when it's mentioned that Tom gets into a car accident, and it was mentioned that there was another woman in the vehicle with him who broke her arm. It made it to the papers. It wasn't quite a scandal, and they just moved away. And then Nick mentions that it's quite an interesting coincidence that Gatsby buys the house across the bay. And Jordan kind of corrects him and is like, it wasn't a coincidence. Like, it was very intentional. Yeah, here he goes. It was a strange coincidence, but it wasn't a coincidence at all. Why not? And he goes, Gatsby bought that house so that Daisy would be just across the bay. Super, super intentional, and he's able to like reach out to the green light and all this. But he goes to set up the like Daisy meeting, and he mentions like going into the city, which should be fine if it's just a meeting. But there's almost an not even almost, there's definitely an insecurity with Gatsby where he absolutely needs her to see the house. But obviously they're not going to the house, they're going to the house next door. So it's perfect, right? And so it gets set up in all of this, but it's a very interesting point that even with all the money and all the status, all the wealth, all the everything, when it comes to meeting Daisy, Gatsby is like filled with complete fear, complete nervousness, and he's super insecure about everything leading into it. And this is where I think chapter 5, where when I mentioned that this story is a lot about like failure and failing to meet your dreams, and even when you do, a lot of things kind of just like when reality hits, it goes wrong. Sorry, I'm drinking some water. I think chapter 5 is really the highlight of. I think chapter 5 and 6 are the highlight of that, and then when everything comes crashing down, chapter 7. I feel like kind of the first 4 chapters are really all just set up for the events that take place in these coming chapters. So, quick recap. Chapter 5 is Gatsby, as soon as he returns home, Gatsby's like, well, hello there, you know? And he's trying to get an excuse to hang out with Nick without bringing up the obvious of what he hoped was talked about. And then he's like, you know, what day works for you? And he's like, well, I don't want to trouble you. What day is better for you? And then there's just a lot of things where he's like, put it off for a couple of days, and that way he can prepare it to all look great. Gatsby here offers a way for Nick to make some money since he's a little poor. But Nick kind of like feels like it's going to be shady, and even when he is assured that it won't be, he's still just like, nah, I'm good. And so he passes on it. Which he mentions during He goes, I realize now that under different circumstances, that conversation might have been one of the crises of my life, because the offer was obviously and tactlessly for a service to be rendered. I had no choice except to cut him off there. So it's like, obviously there was going to be something going on, especially in retrospect, but he luckily passed on it. But so Nick does ask Daisy to come for tea. And when he specifically asks or says, don't bring Tom, she goes, what? And he goes, don't bring Tom. And she goes, who's Tom? She's like so willing to meet him alone and get away from Tom, which kind of shows her dissatisfaction with everything.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Hello.
I was kind of going over how insecure and nervous Gatsby was with setting everything up for the tea time.
Yes. I don't remember. Does this happen at Nick's house or Gatsby's?
Tea time, it happens at Nick's house.
That's right.
But Gatsby goes all out, like gets his lawn cut. He doesn't care that it's raining and all that. He gets the lawn cut. He gets like a bunch of flowers, set up all this stuff. And then he is very disappointed by the fact that Nick only has like one servant, and they're kind of like the treats just are not up to his standard, but he tries not to say anything about it.
Right.
I also mentioned Nick passed on the offer to make some money for like working for Gatsby. And he mentions like it would have been one of the like crises of his life if he had, because it would have got him, into the underground. But
God forbid, Nick
kind of very happy Daisy was willing to meet up without Tom. She was like, he was like, don't bring Tom. She goes, what? Don't bring Tom. And she's like, who's Tom? It's like totally willing to. And then here we are at the scene of, and he goes, and Nick goes, is everything all right? Gatsby asks, is everything all right? And then Nick goes, the grass looks fine if that's what you mean. And he goes, what grass? Oh, the grass in the yard. Like, just, this is how like out of it he is. He's so nervous. And he goes, of course, they're fine. And then he added hollowly, old sport. Old sport. Yeah, it's such a like forced line from him. But yeah, so he gets super nervous and he's like trying to leave. He's like, look, it's too late. She's not coming. And he's like, it's 2 minutes to 4. Like, she's coming. And then he's just like freaking out. And then the car comes. And it's very funny, the whole scene where like he tries to like make it nonchalant, completely falls apart at it. But it's also mentioned like how mentioned earlier that Gatsby very obviously like has not slept. It's visible in his eyes.
Right.
But they meet, everything is going interestingly, but he's just a little too nervous. Things are not going great at first. So when they're sitting here like kind of staring and talking, and it's like very awkward, all this thing, eventually the tea finally comes, which helps break that up. And then Nick excuses himself, and immediately Gatsby follows and he goes, where are you going? And he's like, I'll be back. And he's like, no, I've got to speak with you about something. Close the door. And he's like, it's a terrible mistake, a terrible, terrible mistake. And it's like, you're just embarrassed. And she's embarrassed too. And he's like, she's embarrassed. And he's like, you're acting like a little boy, all this stuff, which this is literally what he's been dreaming about for 5 years coming true. It shows that he is really human at the end of the day.
This is the purpose of the parties. This is the purpose of all the...
This is what everything that he's been doing for at least 5 years straight has been about.
Right.
But yeah, so he stays excused. He tells him like, hey, like, it's rude of you to leave her alone there. And he kind of wants to say something, but he's like, damn, you're right. And he kind of goes back. And Nick just like goes outside and he relaxes for a while. He comes back in, and they're both like glowing, talking to each other. They're just like full of joy, full of happiness. Like everything's like sunshine and rainbows. And of course, the rain had cleared as a symbolic gesture of that, right?
Right.
Oh, hi. Are you reviewing the entire book right now? Daisy So Real Me Coded. All right, leaving since you guys aren't reading chat. I'm so sorry, Kaozia. I was
Aren't
reading that
reading
part of my
chat.
notes.
I just came back.
I did not mean that. I'm not reviewing the entire book, just kind of going through events in order. I'm so sorry though. Yeah. I've been trying to like keep an eye on the chat, but it's on the my notes are on the second screen. And so like I have my notes over top and I've been missing chat. So sorry about
Oh
that.
no.
I feel terrible. That sucks.
The whole book though, for real, yes.
Yeah, I mean just like a quick overview, reviewing the whole thing. Yeah. Kind of where was I? I don't remember, but they go into the house. That's what we'll get to. They go into the house after they're glowing and all this stuff. And it's mentioned that Gatsby is like revaluing everything he owns according to how Daisy responds to it.
Right. He's willing to throw away like whatever aspects of himself don't suit that.
Yeah.
Almost, right?
Yeah. So there's like a weird scene. I don't even like know what I think about it. It's just like a very odd scene where as he's like grabbing all these clothes and showing all these shirts and like just piling them and all this, she like grabs the shirts and starts crying and she's like, I've never seen such beautiful shirts before. I don't even know what to think about the scene. It just like stands out as being like a little odd. I think it's just like how emotional.
Right. I mean, obviously it's not about the shirts, right?
Yeah.
It's certainly not about the shirts.
I think it's just
but
about like Gatsby, you know?
Yeah.
But also the fact that maybe Gatsby has like the money to finally support her the way that she's always wanted.
Right.
This is when, not too far down as they're going. Yeah, here's the pile of shirts going one by one. All the different. It like explains how expensive they are and all this. And yeah, suddenly with a strained sound, Daisy bent her head into the shirts and began to cry stormily. They're such beautiful shirts. Makes me sad. I've never seen such beautiful shirts before. It's just a very odd thing. But here, not too much later, is the one thing sure and nothing sure. The rich get richer and the poor get children. In the meantime, in between time. This is Klipspringer, who was like the only person worth mentioning as the boarder, playing the piano and doing the music and all that. There's a part that I very specifically quoted the entirety chunk of into my notes in case I didn't have a book open.
Ooh.
And that is, as I went over to say goodbye, I saw that the expression of bewilderment had come back into Gatsby's face, as though a faint doubt had occurred to him as to the quality of his present happiness. Almost 5 years. There must have been moments even that afternoon when Daisy tumbled short of his dreams, not through her own fault, but because of the colossal vitality of his illusion. It had gone beyond her, beyond everything. He had thrown himself into it with a creative passion, adding to it all the time, decking it out with every bright feather that drifted his way. No amount of fire or freshness can challenge what a man can store up in his ghostly heart.
I wrote this down as well.
Yeah, this I think is the absolute deepest meaning of the entire novel. I think this quote right here. The talk about how he finally gets what he wants, and after he's out of it for a second, he's like almost confused because his present happiness does not live up to what he had dreamed it would be.
Right.
And that Everything here is a failure. Everything here is a complete collapse of like what he wanted. It and it's not like she wasn't bad, but nothing could live up to what he had imagined in his head, right?
Right.
No amount of fire or freshness can challenge what a man can store up in his ghostly heart. If you create this idea of a person and this idea of a future and this everything is the ideal that you want, nothing will ever live up to it, right? No human can live up to what you can imagine.
Right. I've always really liked that quote. I really do.
Yeah. I think it might be, in my opinion, like the best quote out of the entirety of the book.
Right.
But yeah. Um he mentions like her voice is amazing because it couldn't be overdreamed. The voice was a deathless song. There's a lot of talk about how good her voice is, which is funny. Yeah, reality is often disappointing. Great quote from the book. Yeah, exactly. It not only is like
Yes.
reality often disappointing, reality will never live up to the ideas that you will build in your heart. But he goes, they had
No amount of
forgotten me.
money or like grandstanding can fix that either. Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's that's just one of my favorite parts of the book. Even just the first line where it's like the faint doubt had occurred to him as a quality of his present happiness. It's like it's already showing that even if it doesn't live up to it, it also shows that getting what you want, you will only want more.
Right.
Yeah. There's so much to like say about this part of the book and this quote. And it really just shows what'll happen later as well, where he will like be greedier. He will keep asking for more, and it will never be enough for him.
Gatsby specifically is interesting in that, like, again, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but like, the once he has what he's looking for here, once he has that initial relationship with Daisy, right,
Yeah.
where they're familiar with each other and they're talking again, like he
Mhm.
drops so much of that like facade that he's been putting on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I always found that kind of real.
Well, she also knew who he was before all of this. And really,
Right.
that kind of starts after he invites her to a party and she doesn't like it. Like, just plain and simple, she didn't like the party. So he's just like, all right, I don't need any of this bullshit anymore.
There was that whole thing about people showing up and all that, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I do remember this.
Yeah. So the next chapter, I think we can go over pretty quick here, is like the reporter will ask him for comments. Kind of, this is when we get revealed that his name is James Gatz. We get a like the full reveal about him. But it's mentioned it was a random shot, but the reporter's instinct was right. It mentioned so.
Right.
But if it fell just short of being news, once again, right? Like you can if you got enough money, despite how big of a deal it is, it can kind of just fade out. But yeah, we learn a lot of his past here, which will later be revealed. But this is when it's revealed to us, the reader. Interestingly, we learn about Dan Cody and how he was a like millionaire from doing like all the rushes, like the gold rushes and all that kind of stuff. He just kept going around and he made all his money that way.
Is this where? Is this where? Hang on, I'm trying to read along.
This is when we get his real past, where we
Right,
learn like
okay.
he was James Gatz. He wasn't Jay Gatsby. He was like a laborer, but he also just like drifted through around and like it's kind of implied that he slept with an absolute shit ton of women during this part.
Yeah.
Like just an absolute insane amount of women he was sleeping with is what this part kind of implies. Like every night almost was a different woman.
God.
Yeah. And he just you know, it kind of goes, but it does specify that once he joins Dan Cody's yacht, that's kind of when everything changes. He meets himself with this millionaire. All this stuff is going good. That's when he decides that he's going to go by Jay Gatsby instead of James Gatz.
Right.
Kind of on a whim, but it worked out for him, I guess. But yeah, he was just like he wasn't even like a proper employee either. He was just like, whenever Cody wanted to get drunk, he would just be like, all right, you do everything. Because he knew that he was like awful when he was like that. And it was for 5 years that he did this, right? And they went 3 times around the continent, and it would have went indefinitely, but his wife, Dan Cody's wife, came on board, and then a week later he died. Implied that she murdered him for his money, which was kind of implied several times beforehand that it was going to happen. And he was supposed to get $25,000 out of it, but he didn't get it. There was like some weird legal device used against him, but everything else went to his wife. Like there was no issue there. But it was very, very interesting and noteworthy the way that all went down.
I think I didn't write too much in this section.
It does also mention that this is likely where Gatsby decided to leave liquor alone, was seeing like how much it kind of fucked up Dan Cody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is also funny because he ends up becoming a bootlegger. But yeah, this is where, so I think the important part here is what comes up where Tom and Gatsby finally like personally meet, and there's this like passive aggressiveness in the way they talk entirely.
Yes.
And it's just Tom with Gatsby. This isn't like where he's like, oh yeah, I know your wife, and like Tom's like, I hate these he says something like, call me traditional, but I can't believe we like let these women go meet people, basically. Oh yeah, here goes. By God, I may be old-fashioned in my ideas, but women run around too much these days to suit me. They meet all kinds of crazy fish. He doesn't really know anything, but he's kind of like grandstanding his position and power against Gatsby, who also has like a bunch of power, and it's kind of this old money versus new money kind of situation. There's a lot going on, and this isn't even getting into the fact that he is not aware of like his thing with Daisy, right?
Right. Not yet anyway.
But yeah. They invite him to go somewhere. He goes, yeah, I'll come with you. And then they just dip. Where they're like, hey, tell him we couldn't wait. And they just left without him. But yeah, on the following Saturday night is one of Gatsby's parties. And Tom is with her on that one. They kind of go over it, but Gatsby continually just introduces Tom as the polo player, which really fucking gets under his skin. He's not Tom Buchanan, he's Tom the polo player, right?
Right.
It just like, it's like such a little thing, but it really just gets under people's skin. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so that was that. And then where is it? It kind of goes over like this whole party. It's like a normal party, but Daisy gets a little bit of time with Gatsby, and that's kind of described as like the only time at this party she enjoyed. But she didn't like the party. And Gatsby does mention, he's like, she didn't like it. She didn't have a good time. He's like, I feel far away from her. It's hard to make her understand. And Nick's like, the dance? And he's like, no, that's not important. And he says he wanted nothing less of Daisy than she should go to Tom and say, I never loved you. After she had obliterated 4 years with that sentence, they could decide upon the more practical measures to be taken. Which he had a bunch of ideas and all this stuff, but
He's already imagining how that works, right?
Yes. This is kind of showing his greed, right?
More of the idea of the thing and not the actual reality of it.
Yes. He needs the big scene. He needs this. Things have to go exact, and it's all this stuff. But Tom during this, or is this the next? Yeah, Tom during this part somewhere in here. I kind of already went past it, but Tom says, "Who is this Gatsby anyhow? Some big bootlegger." And Nick goes, "Where'd you hear that?" And Tom goes, "I didn't hear it. I imagined it. A lot of these newly rich people are just big bootleggers, you know." And Nick's like, "Not Gatsby." Well, you know who was wrong. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so it was a good one. It kind of sets up some things, but it's just another like party focused chapter.
Right. Lots of little social interactions.
But it mentions that, like, when it kind of goes over this at the end, where he talks about, like, he wants to go back to Louisville and get married there at her house and all this, it shows his attachment to how things were 5 years ago.
Right.
But he's not attached to the past the way Tom is, where Tom wants everything to be stuck in the past. Because Gatsby doesn't want to return to the past where he didn't have Daisy, where he didn't have money, where he didn't have everything. He wants to go to the future where he can like relive what the past should have been, right?
Right.
Very, because it's like in Tom's case, he's literally like, my life peaked then, but Gatsby, that's like the worst time of his life, right? He was broke, he was penniless, and he lost the woman of his dreams. But he's still attached to that idea while he's sitting here with her in arm's reach.
Right. Always chasing something, right? The idea of the thing.
I want to see if I can find it because it should be in this part somewhere. Yeah, here it is. When he was talking about how she doesn't understand, and we'd sit for hours, and he goes, Nick goes, "I wouldn't ask too much of her," I ventured. "You can't repeat the past." And Gatsby replies to that, "Can't repeat the past? Why, of course you can." Which just shows like he's not really attached to that, right? He always talks about this idea of himself and this idea of loving Daisy and all this. But now that it's like here, it's not what he cares about. Anyway, that'll lead us into chapter 7 here.
Woo!
Which
we're actually kind of flying through this, Asada.
Yeah, we'll be done here in a second. This last part will zip by. Because really, like, chapter 7 is a lot of events, but there's, like, less things to really talk about. Right?
Right.
But they mentioned that they're meeting more often. Right? Daisy and Gatsby are meeting more frequently and in the evenings and stuff. So he fired all of his servants to avoid gossip, or so he says. But really, we've learned, like, she doesn't care about all that. So he's like, I don't care about it if she doesn't care about it.
But by this point, the parties have stopped, right?
Yeah, the parties have stopped. It's all over. Like it's all done. He's just here. He's just living for Daisy, right?
Right.
We do learn that all of the new servants who quote unquote won't gossip or anything, they're all from the underworld, right? They're all like criminals. They're people who have ties to Wolfstein.
And yep.
Yeah. But they go over, right? They meet. It's a super, super hot day. Yeah, they're over there. They're over at the Buchanan's house. And they're kind of complaining and all this, but everything's going well. Like Daisy and Gatsby kind of doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Daisy and she's kind of being a little too obvious about it, intentionally so. She sends Tom away and immediately kisses Gatsby, right? And then Jordan Baker's like, "What are you doing? Like, there's another woman here." And she's just like, "All right, well, you kiss Nick then." Like, she doesn't care. And this is when her daughter comes in. This is like the other time that her daughter's mentioned. Just kind of a weird thing, right? Um, yeah, it's a freshly laundered nurse leading a little girl came into the room. Blessed precious, and it's come to your own mother that loves you, and like all this stuff. They're just like talking and enjoying. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, look, I got dressed before lunch and all this. And she's like, yeah, that's because your mother wanted to show you off to her own child. She says that, right? And she called her a dream and all this stuff. But, and then she just kind of like, look, she looks like just like me. All right, bye. Like literally just a like tiny little thing where she just shows off her child as a display piece.
To be that rich. She probably, I mean, like
it does. There's a point where it's mentioned that it bothers Gatsby a little bit, kind of seeing that there is like they really did have a kid, right? Like you can't turn back the clock on a kid.
Right.
But there's
it
a whole
doesn't
thing.
fit into to his idea there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like a shattering of his idea. Like, would you really have kids with somebody you didn't love? Is kind of like this idea, right?
Right.
But yeah, there's a whole thing where like Tom is kind of like verbally being rude to Gatsby. Oh, there was this one here I want to mention. So you mentioned about Tom's pretending to be like intelligent and stuff, and I mentioned how it's always like this disaster and stuff. He goes, I read somewhere the sun's getting hotter every year, said Tom genially. It seems that pretty soon the Earth's going to fall into the sun. Or wait a minute, it's just the opposite. The sun's getting colder every year. It just
there's just no like clear line of thought there, right?
It's just as long as there's like an impending disaster, right? Even when it was like the mixed race and the hordes of it, there's always an impending disaster coming. We should fear the future and focus on the past is basically what Tom is.
I like that. I like that. I'm far too dumb to have come to that conclusion on my own.
But yeah, so kind of go over it more, but just going to kind of zoom by a lot of this stuff. It's a lot of like Tom kind of pressing Gatsby and all this stuff. And they're like, who wants to go to town? And then Daisy, right in front of Tom, like looks at Gatsby and goes, you look so cool. And their eyes meet and they stare at each other. With an effort, she glances down and she goes, you always look so cool.
This is a moment I wrote down as well.
She told him that she loved him, and Tom Buchanan saw. He was astounded. His mouth opened a little. He looked at Gatsby, back at Daisy, as if he had just recognized her as someone he knew a long time ago, which is kind of an interesting part because in a way he likes to see the past, right? He always wants to live the past. Daisy used to be this woman full of vitality and had all this stuff. A lot of the things he looks for in his mistress, right?
In Myrtle, right?
But he sees her doing it for another man, which is a huge like issue, right? But Tom like is trying to like break them up and all this stuff, and he's like, okay, let's go into town, let's get apart, let's do all this. You know what I mean? He's like get these two separated is his idea.
Yeah.
But afterwards, there's a part where I want to mention. See if I can find it. Let me check chat. Oh, good night, Leaf. Have a good night.
Leaf. Good German night.
Dude, it's crazy. I need like a third monitor for this because I have notes plus what's on stream. This is crazy.
You want to hear something nuts? I don't have two monitors.
That's crazy. No wonder you never read chat.
Oh, damn.
But yeah, so yeah, when Tom like realizes they're in love and he kind of snaps on them and all this, he insults like Gatsby's car. He's like, "I'll take you in this circus wagon," offering to drive it because she wants to be in that car.
Right.
And then she like kind of scoops herself out of his arm. Very important thing here because remember he's all focused on his strength and all this, and his own wife's like escaping his power there. It's very like important.
Very physical reminder. Right?
Yeah. So then like Nick and Jordan, they go into the coupe, or they go into that car, and then her and Gatsby go in the coupe, right?
Right.
But there was a point here that I wanted to find when they were separate. Ah, yes. When Tom steps away to get some whiskey, Gatsby's like, I can't say anything in his household sport. And he goes, she's got an indiscreet voice, Nick remarks. It's full of, and he's trying to think. And Gatsby goes, her voice is full of money. And he goes, that was it. I never understood before. It was full of money. That was the inexhaustible charm that rose and fell in it. The jingle of it, the cymbal song of it. High in a white palace, the king's daughter, the golden girl. So it's funny because we've like had all this description of her voice through the entire thing.
Right. We're made to believe she sounds very good.
Yeah, all this stuff, but it's really just a voice of money. Just a kind of interesting note there. But also like Gatsby kind of understanding his social place and being like, I can't say anything when I'm at his house.
Right.
But so they're in the car and they're driving, and Tom's like, hey, I investigated Gatsby. He was also annoyed at a part here where he's like, how come you two didn't tell me about him? Like, you obviously knew this was going on. Which is kind of it's a very funny, hypocritical moment because he says this. Yeah, he goes, I don't remember exactly where it is, but he's basically like, how come you guys didn't tell me about this happening? Right? Like, you obviously knew this was happening. And funny enough, it happens while they're under the eyes of Dr. TJ Eckelberg. And it happens
The whole thing.
right near his very own mistress, just to show his hypocrisy, right? Howdy, Bybon. So, just a very interesting point there where, like, he's being a hypocrite about this, where he's mad that his wife's having an affair when he's had several himself, and that it's happening literally. This conversation is happening as they're going by his mistress.
Right.
Yeah. So they fill up he fills up the tank, all this stuff. They really talk like Wilson at this point is like super sick, right? He's always been described as like sickly, but he's like can barely move levels of sick. This man's like ready to keel over dead. He kind of goes over into like why he wants the money, and Wilson's like, yeah, I learned that my wife is having an affair. Right? Or trying to. But anyway, Wilson is like, Tom is basically like absolutely abusing Wilson here. But yeah, he goes, I got wised up to something funny the last 2 days. That's why I want to get away. But they ask him, and he goes, the relentless beating heat was beginning to confuse me, and I had a bad moment there before I realized that so far his suspicions hadn't alighted on Tom. He had discovered that Myrtle had some sort of life apart from him in another world, and the shock had made him physically sick. I stared at him and then at Tom, who had made a parallel discovery less than an hour before, and it occurred to me that there was no difference between men in intelligence or race, so profound as the difference between the sick and the well. Wilson was so sick that he looked guilty, unforgivably guilty, as if he had just got some poor girl with child, it says.
Right.
But something interesting to note here is the way he discovered it finally is like what helped him put two and two together really was when she came home with the broken nose.
Right.
And she wouldn't tell him how it happened, I'm guessing. Right. This is me inferring. She wouldn't tell him how it happened or anything like that. So he finally was like, she goes out into town. She's been doing this for a while, and now she comes back with a broken nose. She's living like another life. Just a very interesting note there. We get another mention here, somewhere right in here, where the eyes are watching over everything again. They like, oh yeah, here it is. I've been warned of something over the ash heaps of the giant eyes of Dr. TJ Eckelberg kept their vigil. but I perceived after a moment that other eyes were regarding it with peculiar intensity from less than 20 feet away, which was Myrtle watching and seeing the car. She sees that Tom's in this car, which is important later, obviously, when she gets run over. But oh, and then she also sees Jordan Baker and assumes that that's Daisy.
Interesting.
Because she didn't know what Daisy looked like. She just saw a woman with Tom and is like, that's it. That's his wife. I finally know what she looks like, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's probably what leads to like driving her over the edge. There's a line here that I really liked here, which is just, there is no confusion. This is like how it opens after the break is, there is no confusion like the confusion of a simple mind. Which is because it really, in retrospect, it sets up like the confusion that Myrtle's having, what will be the confusion that Wilson has. It's just like, it's a very funny little like precursor to all the events that are about to happen. It doesn't really state in any specific terms, but it kind of implies a lot that based on like how Tom is behaving and stuff, like now his mistress is leaving in a couple of days. Now his wife is potentially leaving him for Gatsby and all this stuff. Like his life is like crumbling apart in front of him. And he acts very nervously.
Yes.
Even as they like drive off to go to the destination, when he doesn't immediately see the other car, he kind of slows down because he thinks that they're just going to leave. Like they're literally going to leave right then and there and just drive off forever.
No amount of wealth or power.
Yep, no amount of wealth or power will get him what he wants.
Right.
He has it in spades, but it doesn't give him what he wants. Yeah, we kind of go over that. Move on. Oh, this is where we learn about Biloxi. Well, first of all, they're like, there's a very high tension between Gatsby and Tom as they get here, right? He kind of makes fun of him for like the old sports stuff, but there's a mention of Biloxi, which is really a nobody guy, but it was just kind of like funny because I mentioned him and there's like parallels between him and another character, but it's just like an irrelevant add-on to like give them something to talk about that's not just pure like drilling, you know? They talk about Oxford, talk about how he's lying. They're like, we need to cool down. Like heat's causing us to all go crazy is kind of like an excuse that's being given. But Daisy is like, you're causing a row. Please have some self-control to Tom. And he goes, self-control, repeated Tom incredulously. I suppose the latest thing is to sit back and let Mr. Nobody from nowhere make love to your wife? Well, if that's the idea, you can count me out. Nowadays, people begin by sneering at family life and family institutions, and next they'll throw everything overboard and have intermarriage between black and white. Again, there's this fear of the future and a focus on the past, but also mixed in with the fact that he is terrified of losing his wife to Gatsby here. But this is kind of what causes, which also like Jordan's like, but we're all white here. Like, what are you talking about? But yeah, Gatsby digs in and immediately Daisy's like, don't. And he does it anyway. And he's like, your wife doesn't love you, said Gatsby. She's never loved you. She loves me. And Tom goes, you must be crazy. And now, like, they're getting into it. Gatsby jumps up. He's like, she never loved you. Do you hear? She only married you because I was poor and she was tired of waiting for me. It was a terrible mistake, but in her heart, she never loved anyone except me. Because, I think this is important because earlier when talking about how he felt about Daisy, one thing that's mentioned is the fact that because there were so many other men interested in her, it created higher value for her to him.
Right.
And so it's super important to feel over everybody else that she never loved anyone the way she loves him. In his head, for things to be real, for things to have been worth the wait and all this, she cannot have actually loved Tom.
Again, feeding into the whole, it's more about the idea of the thing.
And it's also never enough.
Right.
Yeah. But they kind of Tom's like, what's been going on? Like, and Gatsby's like, it's been going on for 5 years and you didn't know and all this. And he's like, you've been seeing him for 5 years? And he's like, no, we both loved each other the whole time. And you didn't know. To think you didn't know. Like, he's laughing. He's so in his head. He's so sure of this. I love this part where they go, Tom tapped his thick fingers together like a clergyman and leaned back in his chair. You're crazy. And he's like, I can't speak about what happened 5 years ago. I didn't know Daisy then. But I'll be damned if you see how you got within a mile of her unless you brought groceries to her back door. Which is, so he's like insulting his status and all this, right? It's a big thing. They're having a big back and forth. But he says, when talking about how she never loves him, he says, she does though. The trouble is that sometimes she gets foolish ideas in her head and doesn't know what she's doing. He nodded sagely. And what's more, I love Daisy too. Once in a while, I go off on a spree and make a fool of myself, but I always come back, and in my heart, I love her all the time. Very interesting, because then she's like spree. What do you mean spree? Oh, you want to know why we left Chicago? Why don't you tell him the story about that spree? Yeah. So she's been not happy with him. He's been not happy with her. It's, it all kind of comes bubbling up, right? When a scene like this happens, it's like everyone with everything is kind of just like, it's bubbling up and it's blowing up, right?
Right. Everything all at once.
But there comes to a point where he's like, Daisy, that's all over. Just tell him the truth. Tell him you never loved him. And she was like, why? How could I love him possibly? And she's just like, and he's like, you never loved him. And she's just like very reluctant. She goes like, I never loved him. And he keeps mentioning all this stuff. But she's like, you want too much. She cries to Gatsby. I love you now. Isn't that enough? I can't help what's past. And she starts sobbing. I did love him once, but I loved you too. And Gatsby's eyes opened and closed. You loved me too, he repeated. Tom says, even that's a lie. She didn't know you were alive. Why there's things between Daisy and me you'll never know. Things that neither of us can forget. And the words seemed to bite physically into Gatsby. I want to speak to Daisy alone, he insisted. She's all excited now. Even alone, I can't say I never loved Tom, she admitted in a pitiful voice. It wouldn't be true. Of course it wouldn't, agreed Tom. And that is where like Gatsby's dream falls apart, basically, right?
It just fucking crumbles, yeah.
Completely crumbles. And then they kind of dig into stuff. They mention like the drug stores. They mention the some other stuff, but they kind of go back and forth with this guy, Walter Chase, where it's like, oh, you wouldn't believe this stuff he'll tell me about you, Tom. And he's like, yeah, but he knows what you've done. And he like kind of holds this like piece of blackmail above Gatsby, and Gatsby kind of just like slinks down because he's like, damn, like he got. And there's like this funny line after all this where they're like, okay, like we're leaving. Gatsby and Daisy leave because Tom's like, okay, you won't try anything anymore because I have this on you. He's like, that's right. Like whatever. And Tom kind of makes them stay, like Nick and Jordan. But it's kind of funny because he's like, do you want any whiskey and all this other stuff? And Nick's like, no, I just remembered that today's my birthday. I thought it was really funny. So it's like everything blows up and it's his birthday. Bybon says, sorry to interrupt, but it looks pretty fun. We'll be doing another book club soon. Yeah. The next one's gonna be a short story. So it'll be a lot more discussing the themes and stuff with a short story. There's less events to cover. We kind of covered a lot of the themes and things earlier in this one. Interestingly,
Right.
I didn't have like a format set up. I just kind of dove into this. So
This is fun. I think next time I just really need to read it like over a
yeah,
longer period of time. Which is entirely my fault, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he talks. He's like, I'm 30, and he's like kind of worried about this like decade of loneliness ahead of him and all this. But then, Jordan Baker, who's next to him, it's like the warmth of her touching him. He's like, oh, like he feels reassured. But they end this with, so we drove on towards death through the cooling twilight. Which, if you've never read Great Gatsby and you didn't know about Great Gatsby, you're like, oh, that's a really weird line. Lo and behold, a murder has already happened. But yeah, so all that kind of goes on. There was a line in here. Oh yeah. So they're talking about Wilson. This is like neighbor talking. And he goes, generally, he was one of these worn out men. When he wasn't working, he sat on a chair in the doorway and stared at the people in the cars that passed along the road. When anyone spoke to him, he was invariably laughed in an agreeable, colorless way. He was his wife's man and not his own. Very interesting way to like describe somebody, right? Like he isn't his own person. He's his wife's person. And he's like, there's no color to him when he talks.
I think there are a few different characters in this book that are like the tug of war of agency, right? They represent the tug of war of agency.
Mm-hmm.
And this character is certainly like on the other extreme, right?
Oh yeah. He literally has zero, right? Yeah, you're right. A lot of people are kind of like fighting for agency, and like some of the things they do are like trying to take back their life, and then you have this guy.
Right. Take back their life,
he takes back his life as the last thing he does.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Gatsby is trying to present this version of himself.
Mm-hmm.
Tom is trying to present. I just bumped my mic. I'm very sorry about that. Tom is trying to project this younger version of himself, right?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Just a lot of like, where is my agency? But
yes.
But yeah, it's kind of mentioned. So like we see this where it's like this aside where they're like, yeah, I heard him fighting with his wife. She said, beat me, throw me down and beat me, you dirty little coward. Then she rushed out into the darkness, waving her hand, shouting. And then the death car, as the newspaper called it, didn't stop.
The death car.
It drove over. They weren't even sure the color. They didn't know nothing. It was like a huge, like crazy scene. They do describe that her left breast was swinging loose like a flap. She got absolutely obliterated by the car. It was crazy, very violent. But yeah, that said, and then as Nick and Tom approach, Tom's like, wreck. Oh, that'll be good. Wilson will have some business at last. And then something about it, he kind of was like, damn. He's like, all right, let's go take a look. Because, just a wreck is like whatever, but maybe there's something. And Tom obviously eventually sees there's like people are in grief, people are screaming. It's a huge, hectic scene. It's hard to like make sense of anything. And then Tom sees that his mistress is dead. Right. And that she got hit by a car. All this stuff goes on. A well-dressed black man shows up and he's like, It was a yellow car, a big yellow car, new. It drove by me, going about 50 or 60 down the road. And when Tom hears that, he's instantly like, oh, fuck. Because Wilson knows that he was just driving that car. He's like, that wasn't even my car. That wasn't mine. I know what car that is. Like, I'm in the coupe right now. Like, please. Like, he's literally like already pleading for his life.
Right.
He's already giving up the status, because remember, when he's driving Gatsby's car, he presents it to Wilson as his new car. Like, oh, look how fancy my new cool car is. But as soon as there's like any threat, he's just like immediately crumbling, and he's like, "Oh, it wasn't me. I don't even know where it is. I don't know who it is. I haven't seen it." He's also lying, where he's like, "I don't know who it is." Right. What's funny though is the cop hears, and they're like, he's like, "I drive a blue car, a coupe," and then someone like confirms that he was, and then he just kind of let go, and he talks to like Wilson in private, but. When they're driving away, he's like, that goddamn coward, he didn't even stop his car. Which we obviously will later learn is Daisy, not Gatsby.
Right.
This part hits a lot different to when I first read the novel. Says debunked. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into this, and also just like, it's a very interesting part. It's one of those books where I think when you read it, I think reading it as a teenager, like in school, really takes away from the novel. I think it's a novel that the more you've lived life and the more you've seen things, the more the book hits. You know what I mean? I feel that with a lot of them. I feel like a lot of like teenage reading, like, not that they're not good books, but I feel like they don't hold the same weight when it's not something you've really experienced yet.
This is also becoming more and more timely as not to get like political or anything, you know, but as like class divisions rise.
Yes, yeah, because there is on the backdrop, like I've kind of mentioned, where like Nick kind of goes like, look, I'm like just a worker, and this is they're super rich, and they're weird like this and all that. But what's funny is though, so Nick hears that it's a yellow car, so he also knows who it is. But again, he doesn't say anything either, despite being the honest man.
Right. The supposedly honest one, right?
Yeah.
The most honest person he knows.
and yes, Bybon, I do know what I'll be doing next. Oh, you haven't read this book? Well, I apologize for the spoilers. We're like at the tail end of the book, too. This is like the big climactic moment. Yeah, we go over it. Where'd I go? There was a part here. Oh, there was a part in here that was really interesting. So, as a way to show a dichotomy between once the car is learned that it's yellow and like Tom is kind of like trembling here, they still give him a showcase of his strength right around here, where to move Wilson, where is it? Yeah, picking up Wilson like a doll, Tom carried him to the office, set him down in a chair, and came back. They still are showing like how strong Tom is, right? Tom is strong enough to pick this guy up like a doll. He could fold him and crush him if he wanted to. But yet there's just a deep fear in Tom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not as masculine as he likes to appear to be. He's not as like gruff and tough as he tries to pretend to be, is basically the point. But
even if he's not going out there and breaking his mistress's nose.
Anyway, so we jump forward and we're at the house, right? Daisy's already home. Everything else is good. Like, they're like, okay. Nick just wants to separate from everything. He's kind of like sick of this whole thing. And he kind of like, he kind of puts the like soft ending onto his relationship with Jordan Baker here, where she's like, hey, come up with me, and he's just like, no, and like kind of presses it in a way where she's like, okay, he's not about this right now. Which, I mean, fair. He literally was just like basically witness to a murder. But they call a taxi for him. He walks down the way, and Gatsby is still on their property and is like, hey, Nick describes himself as feeling disgusted by Gatsby when he sees him, like when he's talking to him.
Which is the singular, like, harsh judgment he passes on
Yes,
Gatsby the
yes.
entire book, right?
And not the singular. He's mentioned it
Well,
a couple
yeah,
times,
yeah.
but this is actually when this is like the peak of it, and this is also when he suddenly likes Gatsby, basically. Where he hates him at the moment. Gatsby's like, "Hey, was there trouble?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Is she killed?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's just like, "Damn." And then like Nick describes what happened to her, and he's like, "You don't be so graphic." Like, it kind of winces at how disgusting it is. But he asks for the like what happened, and Gatsby's like, "Well, I tried to swing the wheel." Uh, and then Nick kind of jumps in. He's like, "Was Daisy driving?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "But of course, I'll say I was." So like Gatsby still loves her enough, despite everything like blowing up, that he's going to take the fall for her on this.
Right. For the,
For
again.
literally killing someone. Like he's like, I'll go to jail for
Yeah.
her, whatever. He doesn't know that this is obviously going to lead to his murder. But honestly, I think his devotion to her is strong enough that even knowing that, he probably still would have said yes, because the alternative is her dying.
Right.
But yeah, they kind of describe it. They're coming down the wheel. Or coming down the road. She jumps out. Daisy like basically doesn't react quick enough to have either, like, she kind of swerves, and then it's like there's another car, and she like loses her nerve playing chicken and kind of like turns back and just like killed her instantly. Um, but yeah, it's a
There's
whole mess.
one thing I did right about this incident where,
Yeah,
Daisy just kind of checks out.
yeah, she like almost disassociates from everything here.
Yeah. She's just like, oh, whatever.
But yeah, we find out Gatsby is gonna like wait all night for her. They have like a sign or a symbol they're supposed to do. A whole bunch of things. There's a scene that's described when Nick goes to check on them before his taxi comes, where it says Daisy and Tom were sitting opposite each other at the kitchen table, with a plate of cold fried chicken between them and 2 bottles of ale. He was talking intently across the table at her, and in his earnestness, his hand had fallen upon and covered her own. Once in a while, she looked up at him and nodded in agreement. They weren't happy, and neither of them had touched the chicken or ale, and yet they weren't unhappy either. There was an unmistakable air of natural intimacy about the picture, and anybody would have said that they were conspiring together. So it sounds like they were kind of like getting their story straight and stuff, honestly, and he was like getting like what actually happened in the events.
Right.
And she probably did tell him that it was her, but he's not going to sell her out. Because if Gatsby said he'll take the fall, he'll take the fall, you know?
Dark Virus pointing out that you talked about Myrtle dying instantly. I just laughed.
Yeah, that was kind of messed up of you, not going to lie.
Yeah.
It shows the kind of man you are, though.
I have no... Oh, I shouldn't say that out loud.
Damn.
I
there
actually,
is a... Oh, go ahead.
On this reading of this,
yeah,
I found myself like not liking these people even more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're all contemptible people.
Yeah,
nobody here is a good person.
No, and it's, I think, an interesting like look into the heads of people that are so rich that they think they're above consequence, right?
You say so rich, but like I know plenty of people that do shit like this. Not like the murder part, but
right.
Are you saying you've never seen someone who hit their wife because they think they could get away with it?
Honestly, Tasano, I have never met somebody who has hit their wife.
Oh, really?
Really?
Huh. I have. He went to jail for it.
Oh, damn. Well, I mean, like, consequence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like a classic like get angry, hit a wall kind of guy. And then
Oh, yeah.
and then one day a wall wasn't enough and she called the cops and he ended up in jail.
One day a wall wasn't enough is a very poetic way to say that. I like that.
You like that, huh?
I like that. That's good.
All right.
It's good.
I'll keep that in mind. I'll
What?
let your future I'll let your future wife know.
Dude, bold of you to assume I'd ever marry.
Yeah. You might.
Maybe.
AI women might become real.
Dude, all right, you know what? I'm in.
Anyway, there was no, I think it's in the next part. Where was it? I don't know. Did I write it down? Did I write down where it happened? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I mentioned it, but there's a part where basically because he stays there all night, and she eventually goes to turn her light off, and instead of doing the signal, she like stares out the window, maybe like a longing for him or something, and then just like turns it off, no signal or anything. Right. It's mentioned in the next chapter, which is chapter 8, which we should be basically done here soon. Chapter 8's pretty quick and easy.
It is just kind of the wrap up.
We've already gone over this, the whole like Dan Cody and all the like false pretenses and everything about it. But he kind of explains, one of the things he mentions is what I brought up earlier, is the fact that so many men love Daisy is what made her more valuable to him. She became a grail after he spent all this time with her, right? Like this was the, because he didn't despise himself and it didn't turn out as he imagined. He intended probably to take what he could and go, but now he found he had committed himself to the following of a grail. Obviously a reference to the Holy Grail.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. He knew that Daisy was extraordinary, but he didn't realize just how extraordinary a nice girl could be. She vanished into her rich house, into her rich, full life, leaving Gatsby nothing. He felt married to her, and that was all.
Which is the collapse of his idea, right?
Yeah. So this was like him describing like how he fell in love with her in the first place. But he mentions that he was very aware of the youth and mystery that wealth imprisons and preserves, of the freshness of many clothes, and of Daisy gleaming like silver, safe and proud above the hot struggles of the poor. He kind of knew that he would never be able to be with her unless he actually had money. But he says he kind of wished that she would just like toss him out, but she fell in love with him too. And it just led to like this really crazy situation for him. He even like mentions he remembers the day when he went to war and like talking to her and all this, right? And it mentions somewhere in here, I have the note, but when the armistice gets signed after he was off at war, that's when he gets sent to Oxford accidentally. Like papers got mixed up and he ended up at Oxford. And Daisy was kind of writing to him and seemed like she was like nervous to face the world without him. She was hoping that her decision to choose him was correct, but with him like gone, she was like, why can't you come? Why aren't you here? Why can't you come? Because again, if he was actually as rich as he may have come off, or if he was like part of her world rich, then he would have just been able to leave Oxford and go, It kind of all leads into this like nasty, weird situation. But it eventually arrives at her with Tom. It says, where is it? Yeah, and all the time, quote, and all the time something within her was crying for a decision. She wanted her life shaped now, immediately, and the decision must be made by some force of love, of money, of unquestionable practicality that was close at hand. That force took the shape in the middle of spring with the arrival of Tom Buchanan. But yeah, so... And she sent that letter to Gatsby while he was still at Oxford that she was getting with Tom Buchanan. So it was like a whole thing. And that's why I'm pretty sure his letter to her about their marriage was him. It's the only thing that makes sense. It's never explicitly stated, though. He kind of talks about like Louisville and how after he gets back and all this, he goes back to Louisville even though she's not there. And it's just kind of like life is like passing him by, and there's then out into the spring fields where a yellow trolley raced them for a minute with people in it who might have once seen the pale magic of her face along the Catskill Street. No, where was it? Oh yeah, here it is. The track curved and now it was going away from the sun, which as it sank lower seemed to spread itself in benediction over the vanishing city, where she had drawn her breath. He stretched out his hand desperately as if to snatch only a wisp of air, to save a fragment of the spot that she had made lovely for him. But it was all going too fast now for his blurred eyes, and he knew that he had lost that part of it, the freshest and the best, forever. He really like loses a part of himself there in Louisville that he can never get back.
And hang on. You know what? No, I don't have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. All good. So
All good.
We kind of go on again. This is like where, like we've talked about everything that's been said here in retrospect throughout the story, where he's kind of like, this is Gatsby explaining everything to Nick, which is it's kind of, I think it adds to the reread of Great Gatsby, where when you read the Great Gatsby, it's just like these characters doing whatever. But once you finish it, you can go back with the retrospect of their motivations and everything, and kind of like see it that way. But there's a bunch of like little things that go on here, but right at the end here, when they're kind of done talking and all this, and like now Nick really knows who Gatsby is, and this is I think why he like respects him to a degree. But he goes, "I've always been glad what does he go? He goes, they're a rotten crowd," I shouted across the lawn. "You're worth the whole damn bunch put together." And he goes, "I've always been glad I said that. It was the only compliment I ever gave him, because I disapproved of him from beginning to end." First, he nodded politely. Then his face broke into this radiant and understanding smile, as if we'd been in ecstatic cahoots on the fact all this time. His gorgeous pink rag of a suit made a bright spot of color against the white steps, and I thought of the night when I first came to his ancestral home 3 months before. The lawn and drive had been crowded with faces of those who guessed at his corruption, and he had stood on those steps concealing his incorruptible dream as he waved them goodbye. I thanked him for the hospitality. We were always thanking him for that. I and the others. "Goodbye," I called. "I enjoyed breakfast, Gatsby." Which, you know.
I wrote in my notes that this is kind of like one of the times where Nick drops the whole like observer thing and actually like says something, actually does something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because most of the story he's like a passive observer. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we cut.
I think you're gonna like this. Now,
go ahead.
Now that we're kind of at the end. The first thing I wrote in my notes was Nick is a wet piece of bread. That was the first thing I wrote down.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we kind of like jump a little bit in time, and Nick's like, "I'm gonna go back and like describe some stuff, whatever." And he mentions like they had difficulty locating Catherine. When Catherine eventually gets there, like I said, she kind of just like lies. His neighbor is like talking to him and trying to like get him to console his grief, but Wilson is so locked in his head. He brings up the dog leash, which was like a very new dog leash, which never mentioned the dog that she bought, just the leash. Tom brings this up too, where he's like, the food Like he saw the dog food or something, and it looked like it was never used or something like that.
Right.
So it's pretty well implied, like she kept the leash and all the stuff they got for the dog, and just like abandoned the dog somewhere, which is just like pretty fucked up.
Just rich people shit, dude.
Yeah. Well, she's not even rich, right? She's just living off his richness.
Right.
But yeah, he knows that Wilson here mentions like he knew he was kind of living the double. She was living the double life. He mentions when she came back with the broken nose. Mentions the dog leash. Mentions a bunch of stuff, but he just kind of goes in to explain that. And he goes. It was that man in the car. She ran out to speak to him, and he wouldn't stop. Which honestly, he's pretty close to right. Like that's a pretty good guess for him.
Yeah.
And when he spoke to her, he told her, I told her she might fool me, but she couldn't fool God. I took her to the window. With an effort, he got up and walked to the rear window, leaned with his face pressed against it. And I said, God knows what you've been doing, everything you've been doing. You may fool me, but you can't fool God. And it mentions that the pale, enormous eyes from the billboard are still there. And he goes, God sees everything. And his neighbor's like, that's an advertisement. Okay. Like, relax, basically. But he disappears. But Wilson completely disappears. And he wanders around. He's lost. He's wandering. The police can kind of track him. And then he goes missing for a while. He learns eventually that it was Gatsby's name, because at some point he was in West Egg asking where Gatsby's house was. So somehow or another, he found his way there. It mentions the scene. It mentions the description. Gatsby's kind of chilling in the pool. And the guy just walks up to the pool and shoots and kills Gatsby. And then, I believe just a minute later, I don't know if he killed him. Did he kill himself, or did he just like collapse dead after completing his purpose? I don't know if it's ever stated.
I can't really remember.
I
think it was
don't
very
actually
clear.
remember if it's explicitly said he killed himself. But yeah, Wilson, like after getting his revenge and killing Gatsby, kills himself. Which again in the epilogue here. So this is the end of the events of the book, really, and then we get the epilogue. But we learn that Tom sold Gatsby out immediately. So
Right.
Gatsby had no idea what was coming.
Honestly, for Tom in this situation, is kind of this was a smart play.
I mean, yeah, but it's just funny. But yeah, so chapter 9, we kind of go over like the post everything, where they talk about like Catherine says nothing, says like she didn't know who Gatsby was, and she was a good person, etc. This whole like chapter is Nick making calls and trying to find people and anyone to like be Gatsby's family. Like he has no friends. He was so alone in this world, despite having these huge, spectacular parties. Huge mentions where he's just like literally half of this is him just like he goes like Wolfsheim. He goes to like everyone he can think of, and also like accidentally answers one of his criminal calls. But like nobody will show up. Eventually, his father finds news from a Chicago newspaper, and he came to town. But so they postponed the funeral until his father would get there. But his father gets there. Everything was good. I mean, not good. His father's like super proud of his son, Jimmy. He calls him, instead of Jay or James, he calls him Jimmy. He's really proud of his house. He's really proud of everything. We later learned that with his wealth, Gatsby did buy his dad like a brand new nice house. He was still like good to his family.
Yeah.
Kind of shows that he wasn't as detached as some of the other rich people are. Even though he was making his money through illicit means, which was never shared with his dad, he was still like taking care of him in his own way. He was just living here for his dream. It was kind of sad to see like how proud of his son his dad was. Just very Sad, honestly. You know, like literally no friends, no one's there, just his dad, and his dad's just like, oh my god, I'm so proud of my son, blah blah blah, blah, but I can't believe he's dead.
This is
It's
the
crazy.
real like nail in the coffin for the idea, like the illusion, right?
Yeah,
Dark
but
Virus
yeah,
would like us to remember that Owl Eyes does show up.
yeah, but not because he was contacted. He kind of just like shows up to the funeral. Very funny. But yeah, I did mention, yeah, Owl Eyes does show up. He's one of the only people who, again, is never named, but he's just Owl Eyes who shows up. Um, yeah, so I'll kind of just like zoom through this. He's like, look at this, look at it. It was a book from when he was a boy, and it's like his schedule that he had set for himself, and like resolves that he had. You know, really, it does show like he was, you know, he had this idea in his head, but he ended up
Yeah.
you know, and it's like, how do you tell someone like, yeah, your boy had all these ideas and still just ended up being a bootlegger, you know? Oh, which I did want to bring up. Tom shit talked a lot of the fact that he was a bootlegger, even shit talked the new money people for being bootleggers. But he, an old money man, was sitting there drinking whiskey, which he can only get because of the bootleggers. It's just another like peek at the hypocrisy of the old money versus new money. That is a very big theme of Great Gatsby. But
I feel like the whole old money new money thing is interesting because it's just another, you know, it's another one of the ways for Tom specifically to like exert power over people, right?
yeah, but yeah, and then we get to the actual like funeral. 5 o'clock, the procession. 3 cars were there. The hearse, Mr. Gatz, and the minister, and him in the magazine, the limousine. Uh, and then a couple servants and postman like show up. But they do see that owl-eyed glasses, that man, showed up to it. And he goes, I'd never seen him since then. I don't know how he knew about the funeral or even his name. The rain poured down his thick glasses, and he took them off and wiped them to see the protecting canvas unrolled from Gatsby's grave. Kind of mentions some things, but he goes, Owl Eye says, blessed, someone murmured, blessed are the dead that the rain falls on. And Owl Eye says, amen to that, right?
Right.
But he goes, I couldn't get to the house. Neither could anybody else. And he goes, go on. Why, my God, they used to be there by the hundreds. The poor son of a bitch, is what Owl Eye says. And it's true, you know, literally. They used to be there by the hundreds, and no one but him showed up. Like, it was him, his father, and Nick were the only ones at his funeral, and a couple servants. Absolutely wild. But like you said, it kind of shows like the hollowness of money and the hollowness of richness. These people don't live lives, they just live status.
There's something to be said about like Gatsby living for the idea of another person and other people being there for the idea of his wealth, right? His like all of that stuff. And when all of that goes away, he'd stopped the parties by then. He'd stopped like providing a thing for these people, right?
It's also to think, you know, kind of like you said, where he's living for another person and all this. And nobody knew Gatsby. They only knew the image of Gatsby. So when the image of Gatsby dies, no one's there to mourn the real Gatsby.
Right.
See, I like that. That's good. I didn't add that in there. That was good. Thank you, Yoshi.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of went over it, but Jordan Baker called at some point Nick, and Nick kind of refused her. He's just like not willing to put up with it. And so this part, she calls him back, or he calls her back. I don't remember which, but they talk to each other, and she's like, yeah, I'm engaged to another man, and he doubted that. But he pretended to be surprised. And then
Jordan, the serial liar.
Yeah, and then they're kind of talking, And she's like, you threw me over on the telephone. She's like, I don't give a damn about you now. But it was a new experience for me. I felt a little dizzy for a while. So they shook hands. That's what it was. They were in person. And she goes, oh, and do you remember a conversation we once had about driving a car? He goes, why not exactly? She said, you said a bad driver was only safe until she met another bad driver. Well, I met another bad driver, didn't I? I mean, it was careless of me to make such a wrong guess. I thought you were rather an honest, straightforward person. I thought it was your secret pride. And again, he makes it. He goes, I'm 30. I'm 5 years too old to lie to myself and call it honor. She didn't answer, but angry and half in love with her and tremendously sorry, I turned away. So again, where's this secret pride of being honest and straightforward if he is going to turn away from her, angry, half in love, and sorry without mentioning any of it?
Right.
So even when faced with her kind of calling him out on it, he still like sticks to it and goes. Now we're like right at the tail end of the book where I think this is the last part really worth talking about other than the last lines, which is we go over Tom, he finds Tom, right? A few months later, roughly. Like a month later, 2 months later, whatever it is. But he still has like his aggressive way of like standing and all this. He's kind of described as like being the same, basically. Oh, I did skip this part. Sorry. When Nick tried to reach out the day of the murder, which was the day like after everything happened, when he tried to reach out to Daisy and Tom, they had already left on like a vacation.
Yeah, they just noped out, right?
So
They just
like,
got out
so
of there.
which in retrospect we know is he left because he knew that Gatsby was going to get murdered. He told like in retrospect, Wilson came to their house, gets the answer, and Tom's like, we need to get the fuck out of here. And like they go on a vacation to just separate from everything that's happening because they can always retreat into their money to separate from things that are happening. And it's something they do constantly.
Yeah. The France thing again, right?
Basically. But, or like moving away from Chicago or anytime like something bad with real consequence happens or something just that has real consequence happens, they're just like, oh, let's go on a vacation.
Right.
But they're talking and Nick's finally honest with him. This is probably like the first and only time that Nick is like legitimately honest with somebody in the story where he refuses to shake hands and he goes, what's the matter, Nick? Do you object to shaking hands with me? He goes, and Nick goes, yes, you know what I think of you. And he goes, you're crazy, Nick. Crazy as hell. I don't know what's the matter with you. And then this is when he asked about like what happened. And he's like, I told him the truth. He came over while we were getting ready to leave. So I sent down word we weren't in. He forced his way upstairs. He was crazy enough to kill me if I hadn't told him who owned the car. His hand was on a revolver in his pocket every minute he was in the house. What if I did tell him? That fellow had it coming. He threw dust into your eyes just like he did in Daisy's. But he was a tough one. He ran over Myrtle like you'd run over a dog and never even stopped his car. And Nick goes, there was nothing I could say except the one unutterable fact that it wasn't true. So I guess at this point we don't know. I guess Tom didn't know that Daisy did it, right? But like right. Gatsby could have shared that it was actually Daisy driving. But yeah.
But even the person who is his rival in some way.
Yeah. He's just trying to throw him under, yeah. He goes, and if you think I didn't have my share of suffering, look here. When I went to give up that flat and saw that damn box of dog biscuits sitting there on the sideboard, I sat down and cried like a baby. By God, it was awful. Which is just so funny. He's like, look at my suffering.
Right.
This dog that I didn't give two shits about, you know? But Nick's just like, I couldn't even like care to like him. But he's like, but what he did to him was entirely justified. It was very careless and confused. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made. And he goes, I shook hands with him. It seemed silly not to, for I felt suddenly as though I were talking to a child. Then he went into the jewelry store to buy a pearl necklace, or perhaps only a pair of cuff buttons, rid of my provincial squeamishness forever.
I feel like this is a good summary of like the general how do I say this? Just like the characters in the whole story, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the whole like careless people like smashing things up and retreating back into whatever it was. Yeah.
Right.
Funny enough, there's like a mention here, like as Nick's like getting ready to leave New York forever, is that somebody tried to like go to Gatsby's house just to see that it was like the party was over, no one's there. But at the end here, there's the final line is something I think worth talking, which is I want to get to it in a second. Reading. Yeah, here it is. As I sat there brooding on the old unknown world, I thought of Gatsby's wonder when he first picked out the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that it was already behind him, somewhere back in the vast obscurity beyond the city, where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on under the night. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgiastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms further, in one fine morning. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Which is the final quote of the book. Like that's the end of the book. But I think that
Ceaselessly.
line, yeah, borne back,
Yeah.
like we beat on boats against the current. So it shows like everybody here really is trying to go against time, against the past. Like they're all trying to fix some unfixable mistake or change how things turned out or things like that, right? It really is a story of failure by everybody involved. They're all bad people and they all fail in the end.
Yeah. I kind of, now that we've gone, beginning to end, I definitely see where you're coming at the failure thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Like literally
Mhm.
everyone fails, right? Tom loses his mistress. He loses like everything. And he just retreats back to living with Daisy like nothing had changed, right? He doesn't get the vitality he was looking for. He never goes back to his glory days. When he tries to be his like strong, like, oh, I'm a linebacker self, like he still crumbles before another man. Daisy never gets to go back and live the life that she could have with Gatsby. Things never work out with Gatsby. He ends up dead. Myrtle ends up dead, never gets to be with Tom. Wilson ends up dead after seeking revenge. All he wanted to do was live a nice, happy life with his wife. You know?
Right.
It's just like, in the end, literally, it really, yeah, it's a sad story. In the end, it really is a tragedy. Like, The Great Gatsby really is a tragedy.
I think so too.
Yeah.
An American an American
tragedy
Greek tragedy. Yeah.
instead of a Greek tragedy.
Yeah. Yep. Nobody gets what they want.
Nope. Which I think is an important part of the theme of the book, right? It's like it taught, chasing these dreams, but these dreams are like crystallizations of people.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Because
a good way to put it.
instead of focusing on fixing what they have, right? Like Daisy has the life she wants and it's not enough, right? And instead of trying to figure that out, she tries to like find somebody that is the opposite. Same with Tom, right? He's like, I want the vitality and this and that. And instead of dealing with that with Daisy, he tries to find mistresses. Myrtle tries to flee her husband because she doesn't like what she ended up with. Like, that is a constant theme here. And in a way, that is kind of something like Nick avoids, But at the same time, he came east in the first place because he was looking for something that didn't exist there. And then in the end, he retreats back west, just like all of them, where they retreat back
Right.
to whatever. Like, he tries to separate himself from them while living the exact same flaws they lived.
Nick, again, a wet piece of bread was my word, or my way to describe him. Oh, I don't know if you just heard my dog. She's making funny dog noises.
No.
It's probably good. It's probably a good thing.
Ah, perfect. This is what I was looking for. So, this is just an example of one, but...
I wrote that last quote, the born back ceaselessly into the past thing was Nick's like final, like just acceptance of the way things are, right?
Yeah.
It was just like kind of an acknowledgement that these people are the way they are, and that he had no, like, I guess agency is the word here, is the operative word today.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's The Great Gatsby. I think it's a good book. I think it's like, even with a just fresh like reread of it, there's still so much to be had. It really, the reason that it's a timeless book that has lasted as long as it has is because there's so much depth to it.
100%.
It's a really good book, and there's just a lot to it. Like I said, knowing everything about it only makes the second read better. But yeah, so don't mind that. So I guess I'll start setting up the next book club. I'll make a short about this in a day or so. Who's the person you are reading with? Hello, person. This is Hyoshi. Hyoshimaru Hyoshi_en. He's a VTuber.
Heyo.
Kind of. He allegedly makes music. Kind of.
Supposedly,
he likes gambling.
Nuh-uh. No.
He loves gambling.
There we go.
Not bad. He literally is like, he loves gacha games just to gamble. He played this horse game the other day where it's like this absolutely like dog shit 2D horse racing game, but because he could like simulate gambling, he was addicted to it.
Dude, that was so much fun, and I can't wait to play it again. I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
Yeah. But yeah, so my next one, I will have my Discord server set up by the next one, so we can get a little more balance to everything. The next one's going to be a small story by Fyodor Dostoevsky. There's a Crime and Punishment. Amazing. I would love to like read that for a book club. That's way too much to put in 1 month, right? I've read Notes from Underground, which is a really good book by him. It's like the first thing he wrote after getting out of prison. But there's a short story I've always wanted to read by him, which is called White Nights. And it is a book that was written before he went in prison that really encompasses a lot of like how he used to feel. I've never read it before.
Very good.
And Len Gutenberg wants to time out on me. Great. Gotta love that. All right, so we'll just go. I use Gutenberg because it allows these are all like actually like legally free books. These are all everything like it won't even let me like look stuff up. Anyway, it's a site that hosts like public domain and copyright free, where the copyright's expired. I really wish it would work though.
This is a fantastic service.
Yes, it's amazing. It's funny, I have it on my other browser and it's working fine, but I'm not willing to share that other browser.
Yeah.
This is just like a very unfortunate thing. But it's like a 50-page short story, very, very easy read. It's yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different images. I was going to get like kind of a basic overview, but basically, so the White Knights refer to, I believe it's St. Petersburg, when there's those several days consecutive where the sun doesn't set over there. And so I believe they're called the White Knights, and this is a like set of events that happens during that. It's apparently a very like optimistic, potentially romance, I believe, by Dostoevsky.
That's very interesting.
Which is, if you know anything about Dostoevsky, is very interesting. The word optimism and Dostoevsky do not usually go together.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in that. If I can get anything to load here. Probably not. It's probably just whatever. I'm streaming. I don't care. But yeah, you can find it on Gutenberg. You can find it in a lot of places. It's just a small short story. I have it in a big collection of like his shorter works. The copy they have on Gutenberg, if it would load, unfortunately, it's a very good one. It has White Knights for the first 50 pages. Then it has Notes from Underground, which is a phenomenal read. Part 1 and Part 2 are both amazing. Genuinely great reads. It was like it was one of his first after he got out of prison. It really like kind of becomes how he wrote. It does not have The Gambler though, which I think is very interesting. The Gambler is another like big short story for him, which I think maybe you would like, Yoshi, for no particular reason.
No, surely not.
What? Why does it work perfectly fine on my other browser and I cannot get it to work over here? I dislike this. Maybe it's because I have 2 tabs open. Let me see. White Knights. Oh, that might have been it. That's so funny. But yeah, so this is White Knights by Dostoevsky. It might have just not liked me having 2 of them. Oh yeah, here we go. White Knights revolves an unnamed narrator who leads a solitary life in St. Petersburg and unexpectedly finds connection with a mysterious young woman named Nastenka. I'm bad at Russian names. The
Same.
collection explores themes of loneliness, longing, and the complexities of human relationship through the lens of Dostoevsky's profound psychological insight. How do we play along? Yeah, just read, like kind of make your own notes. This one, being that it's a short story, I think I'm going to do a lot more diving into the themes that it goes into. Any analysis you have of it, anything you can think of. I don't really know. I don't really have like anything. It's kind of like a, hey guys, let's read. Let me see the calendar. Either the last Sunday of this month. Yeah, so the 29th is when I'll be hosting this one. It's a 50-page short story that leaves you, if you read 2 pages a day, you'll be done with time to spare. So even if you just read it and you don't make notes and you're just going to like tag along, that's fine. I'm going to have the Discord. That way anyone can kind of jump in and talk if they want to. Like I'll give trusted people a role that are interested in it.
Woohoo!
And then I will hopefully I'll probably do the same where I bring up the actual story itself on the screen here. I might do something to have like visuals or something as well. I tried to have
much
music.
easier to slam
I tried to have a period accurate music for this one. But it didn't. It was so much work to like go back and play every time, so I just like ignored it. Looking forward to this one though. I haven't read this one, so I'm a lot more, I guess, interested in it. You know what I mean? Like I'll probably, for myself, being that it's only a 50-page, I'll probably read it here this week. Kind of write my initial thoughts and my notes about it. And I'll probably like let it kind of simmer and stew for a few days or a week, and then like read it a second time with the knowledge of everything and see how I feel about it again.
Steeping Tasato. Keep things on brand, Mr. D-Man.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Anyhow, this was a very long stream for me. Thank you for everybody who showed up. I look forward to reading White Knights and talking about it. And again, I will make a short story about it here in a minute. Yeah, I enjoyed this one. I would love to have had like more people involved. So, and I think especially with like a shorter story, the more people we can get, kind of the better. Just because a short story, it's going to be interesting to see how people have like different interpretations, and there's less content, right? With this one, I was able to like kind of drag the stream along as we literally went over the entirety of the contents. Really dragged it out there. Went over longer than I expected to or wanted to, but anyhow, thank you to everybody who showed up today. Thank you to Hyoshi for reading and joining me for the discussion.
Heyo.
Otherwise, I would have just done a solo discussion, and it probably would have been a much shorter stream. I'd have probably like zipped through it, but
I'm glad I was here to help you.
I appreciate it.
Drag things along a little bit.
But thank you, everybody. Again, White Knights. That'll be the short story I'm going over. March 29th. Have a good rest of your day. I will definitely not be doing a second stream today. I am exhausted and I need to drink a ton of water to recover my throat. My voice is so strained right now. Dark Virus said, thanks, Hishoshi.
Oh, dude, I love that.
You like Hishoshi?
No.
Don't let him disrespect you.
Nah, it's all right. It's fine. They can have a little fun as a treat.
Yeah. You have a little fun as a treat. Thank you, Dark Virus, for at least having. I know you listened to the audiobook, and you did tune in every couple of times. You said a few things. I appreciated it. Again, hopefully with a shorter story, things will be better, and hopefully we can kind of all get a little more engaged with it next time. I'll try to figure out how to make it a little more engaging. Thank you all, and bye-bye.
Bye, Tasato. Bye, everybody.